The KFC down the block from my apartment had the creepiest statue of Colonel Sanders I've ever seen. It stood in the corner of the dining room, at least 8 feet tall, looming over customers as they scoffed down chicken and mashed potatoes. No one ever sat at the table closest to the statue. There was just a bad vibe the closer you got to the thing. Cold spots, weird smells, a sense that you were being watched. The creepy statue didn't stop me from eating at the KFC at least twice a week, but it did dampen the experience. It was eerie how lifelike the sculpture looked. The perfect white hair and goatee, the wrinkles under the eyes, the ivory pale suit, and just a peak of pink tongue inside its square teeth. You half expected the giant thing to clear its throat at any moment. I started working part-time at that KFC one winter to try to save up extra for gifts, though that's when I swore off fast food for good. Things weren't too bad until they moved me to the night shift about a month into my time at the restaurant. If the Colonel Sanders statue was creepy during the day, it was downright freaky at night. The face always seemed a little different to me each time I glanced at it, the eyes a bit colder. I started taking pictures of the statue each night to check if I was crazy, if it was really changing. However, no matter the angle or lighting, the pic always turned out blurry on my phone. I didn't much enjoy going into work that winter, but I managed to push through it because the pay kept going up. Even after the holidays, I decided to stay on since I was now making enough to actually save up money for the first time in my life. Then, one night in January, I made a terrible mistake. I offered to close the KFC on my own after the night shift. Mandy was supposed to help me. She's a cute redhead that started around the same time as I did. But she was feeling ill, so I offered to handle closing alone. I was trying to score some points with her before working up the courage to ask her on a date. After that awful night, I never saw Mandy again. Once the last customers were gone, I began my closing process. I locked the doors, I turned off the main lights, then I pulled out a Bluetooth speaker, placed it on the table in the dining room, and started to mop up while jamming to some classic rock. I wiped down all the surfaces except that table near the Sanders statue. Again, nobody sat there, so it was always pristine. We had an official policy to only ever close with 2 or more staff on site. The official reason was safety and accountability. But as the minutes ticked by, I felt like someone was moving around the restaurant just out of my sight. I was about to start cleaning the bathrooms when I heard a commotion in the kitchen. "Mandy," I called out, holding my mop up for self-defense, I guess. There was a scraping sound followed by silence. I hopped over the counter, still holding onto the mop like it was a club. Something had knocked over the warming station in the back of the kitchen. It's a series of metal shelves and heat lamps to keep food hot. It was heavy too, far too heavy for a draft of rats. Yeah, we had rats to displace. I leaned the mop against the wall and pushed the warming station back into position. When I turned back towards the dining room, I yelped. The Colonel Sanders statue had moved while I wasn't looking. It hadn't shifted much, just a slight turn of the head, but it was unmistakably different than it was moments before. His eyes were wider, almost black in the low light, and his smile was sharper than before. Wider. I'm imagining this, I said out loud, clutching the mop so hard my knuckles popped. The statue didn't respond. I mean, of course it didn't. It was a friggin' statue after all. Nothing but plaster and paint. Still, I decided to rush through the bathroom cleaning and risk getting reprimand from my supervisor at my next shift. "Hey, are you here alone?" A raspy voice asked me from further back in the kitchen. I froze. "Mandy?" I asked again, still not turning to look. "No, sorry, not Mandy." The voice was male with a slight accent I couldn't place. Swallowing hard, I turned to look for the source. There was something wrong with the light in the back of the kitchen. Everything was cast in a deep, unnatural shade. I saw a figure within the gloom, a shadow darker than the shadows around it, shaped like a man. "Who are you?" I asked. I couldn't see its face, but I had the impression the shadow smiled. I was many things. A soldier, a chef, a business owner, human. Now what I am is here with you. Did you say that you were alone? Or did I imagine that? My mouth was dry. I was having a hard time speaking. There was a loud creak from behind me in the dining room. Then another. I glanced back quickly, not wanting to take my eyes off the shadow in the kitchen for too long. The Colonel Sanders statue had moved again. Now it was standing in the middle of the dining room, partially hunched over like it was trying to sneak, or getting ready to leap. Do you know why I started calling these places KFC? The shadow asked. I turned back to find that it was closer to me too. The light in all of the kitchen was dim now, and growing darker by the minute. I felt trapped between two hungry things, just waiting for me to run so they could chase me. All I could do was stall for time. KFC, it. Well, it means Kentucky Fried. No, the Shadow Man growled. That's what they made me call it. But KFC originally stood for the kind of crowd I wanted to bring into my restaurants. Killer's favorite chicken. There was a creak again from behind me. I knew the statue was moving in the dining room. There was the sound of heavy dragging, tables being pushed out of the way. I wanted to turn and look, but I didn't want to put my back to the shadow in the kitchen. At any moment, I expected to feel a giant plaster hand reach around to the back of my neck and squeeze. A bell rang softly. Suddenly, the light was back to normal in the kitchen. "Nick," a familiar voice called out. "Why are you standing behind the counter holding up a mop?" It was Mandy. She'd come in from the front door, unlocking it with her staff key. The bell was above that door and sounded any time a customer came in. I put the mop down and leaned against the counter. There was no sign of that shadow thing in the kitchen. When I looked out over to the dining room, I saw that the Colonel Sanders statue was back in its usual corner, exactly how it was at the start of my shift. "Geez, Nick, you look awful," Mandy said, walking towards me. "What are you doing here?" I felt guilty asking you to close up alone. I figured I would help you finish up. Nick, are you okay? You look like you're going to throw up." Without saying a word, I hopped over the counter, took Mandy's hand and walked us both out of the KFC without locking up. Just as the front door was closing, I heard another creak, as if some massive plaster figure was shifting to watch us leave. That was the last time I stepped foot in a KFC or any other restaurant. I quit the next morning, calling my manager to ensure that she knew it was my fault the place wasn't closed properly. I didn't want Mandy to get in trouble, though I did beg her to find somewhere else to work. She promised she'd think about it. I never did work up the nerve to ask her out. I ended my lease early and moved out of the city within a month. I've got a new place now, smaller but comfortable enough. I don't leave my apartment much these days. I can work from home, and I get all my food delivered. The rare times I step outside for a walk, well, I walk fast. Maybe it's my imagination, but sometimes it feels like something is out there, looking for me, just out of sight. When I sleep, which isn't often, I dream of creaking sounds and shadows where they shouldn't be. After passing high school, I decided to take a part-time job in a pizza joint to support my college education. I always preferred being self-dependent, so when my dad wanted to pay for college, I refused to take his help. After the classes in the morning, I had the entire day free, so instead of wasting time, I took this job at Domino's Pizza. I worked the night shifts 3 days a week. The payment was enough to keep me going without asking for money from my parents. They liked this headstrong attitude of mine, so my father gave me his old car to drive to work. It's an old black Chevy, one you can easily see in the 60s Hollywood movies. I love this car a lot because apart from being old, it had some personality. The day was Wednesday. I drove to the pizza place and was parking my car when I heard my boss yelling at Jeremy. Jeremy was our delivery guy and not much of a talker. Jeremy stood with a sad face while my boss shouted at him, "I don't understand. You are being quite irresponsible for the last few weeks, Jeremy. How could you just lose someone's order? The only reason I keep on tolerating you is that I know how tough things are for you and your mom right now. But one more mistake and you'll be out. This is your last warning." My boss, Mr. Macaron, got into his car and left for home. I walked to Jeremy and said, "Did you lose another order again?" "Yeah." "Let it be. You'll get better at this." Even though I said this, I couldn't help but think how weird he was. For the last few weeks, Jeremy always happened to lose a pizza somehow. He says he dropped it, misplaced it, the customer didn't answer the door, etc. I think he eats it and makes excuses so he doesn't have to pay for it. Mr. Macaron is not a nice guy, so he keeps a tab on every employee so we don't eat for free. I tried lending some money to Jeremy to save himself from this humiliation, but he denied it. I sat behind the counter waiting for the customers to arrive when the phone rang. "Welcome to Domino's Pizza. May I take your order?" "Yes, I would like to order a 5-meat feast. Make it large." "Sure. Can I get your address?" "Yes, it's the house number 34, 2 blocks from your place." I noted down the contact number and the name of the customer and went to the kitchen to tell the night chef to prepare the order. When I came back, Jeremy asked me a pretty weird question. "Is that an order?" What else would it be? Are you all right?" "No, I'm fine." "So how many pizzas were ordered?" Just one." "Here, take the address and number." Oh, it's not far." I expected him to be happy knowing he wouldn't have to drive far, but instead he seemed upset that the customer lived close by. But then quickly it hit me. He was upset he wouldn't be able to make up some story this time. As we waited for the order to be finished, Jeremy started walking back and forth, being all tense. I looked at him and said, "Hey, tell the chef to make one more. You can take it. I'll pay for it this time, but you have to stop eating the customer's orders." "That's what you think I do?" "What else makes sense? Tell me you're not stupid enough to lose a box of pizza every other day." Jeremy stared at me in a very creepy way and said, "You want to know the truth?" "Well, sure. It's not me who eats them." "Then who is it, Jeremy? Is there something you're not telling me? I don't think you can handle the truth." The order came in, and taking the pizza in one hand, Jeremy rolled his eyes in anger and stormed out of the store. What does he mean by he is not eating these pizzas? And what is this truth he's talking about? I decided to find out once and for all what exactly is going on with this dude. We worked for a few more hours. Orders came in, and one by one, Jeremy delivered them all. When it was about closing time, I got a call from a customer complaining that they didn't get their order. I somehow managed the situation by telling them we ran short on supplies and closed for the night. Jeremy hadn't come back yet, so I waited to confront him. The night chef left, and I came out to pee when I saw headlights of Jeremy's car on the road. I stood in the corner under the shade so that he wouldn't notice me. He came out of the car but didn't walk in right away. He peeked inside the restaurant, trying to see if I was there or not, and then went back to his car. Realizing I wasn't around at the moment, he took out a box of pizza from his car and went around the back. I followed him silently. At the back, there was a storage unit. Thinking he was hiding there to eat this one, I peeked in. But Jeremy was inside the storage unit and talking to someone in a low voice. "This is the last time, Shelley. I can't keep you here anymore. I have to come up with some other plan, because if anyone sees you, they will kill you. But I don't want to go away. I love this pizza, especially after you add this secret ketchup." I've known Jeremy for a while. Shelley was none other than his 10-year-old little sister. But when I contemplated more on this thought, my body became numb with fear. There's no way Shelley is in that storage unit talking to Jeremy, because a few months back, Shelley died, falling from the roof. It was an accident, and that's why our boss feels obligated to keep him hired, even after making many mistakes. What the hell was going on then? I couldn't believe my ears as I heard Shelley's voice. I tiptoed to the storage unit. As I looked inside from the half-closed shutter, my stomach dropped. There was no one inside except Jeremy. He was sitting there all by himself, holding the pizza in his right hand and looking at some invisible being. What happened next was probably the sickest thing I'll ever witness in my entire life. Jeremy took out a paper knife and cut his palm. He then said, "Now, finish your dinner. I know you are very hungry. I just hope Mom will let you come home again. Then I won't have to hide you anymore." He then sprinkled his dripping blood all over the pizza like ketchup and said, "Enjoy it with your special ketchup, Shelley," and then got up and sat on the opposite side and said in the voice of a 10-year-old girl, "Yes, I will. Domino's makes the best pizza." He then started to eat the pizza wrapped around his blood. The way he was chomping on the pizza and smearing the blood in his mouth while laughing like a creepy girl made my skin crawl. I finally understood why he said he doesn't eat them. Though Jeremy was eating, he was playing the role of his dead little sister in his mind. It didn't take much time for me to realize that his sister's death hammered him to such an extent that he created an alter ego within himself that talks like Shelley. So even if to everyone he was Jeremy, in his mind he was Shelley eating and talking. I had no choice but to call the cops. When they came and took him away, he wasn't saying a single word. He was just looking around, searching for someone. After this incident was revealed, Jeremy's mom almost died out of a heart attack. The doctors told her that her son suffers from a dissociative identity disorder. In his mind, he thinks his sister is alive and that he has to take care of her until her mom lets her come back home. The gravity of this mental illness is so horrifying that he completely zones out when he plays his sister's role. His voice becomes like a 10-year-old. He sits and behaves like his sister. Years have gone by after this incident, but I still keep in contact with Jeremy. He is now in a mental institution. The last time I visited him, he said some pretty disturbing stuff to me. He looked at me in the eye and replied, "If Shelley comes knocking at your door in the middle of the night, don't forget to bring her pizza from Domino's, and do add her favorite ketchup." I was driving by the road when giant lightning struck nearby. The night has already been quite challenging for me, and now this. I'm already late for work, and the rainy weather could only make things worse for me. Along with the rumbling thunder outside, I could also hear the gurgling sound of my empty stomach. I recalled the last time I ate was in the afternoon, and now it's past midnight. Thinking about finding a department store on the highway, I slowed down when heavy rainfall occurred. Damn it. I'd switched on the car wipers to get a clear view, but there was nothing on the sides of the road except for deep woods. I almost lost the hope of finding food for the night when a bright purple light fell on my windshield. I fastened the wiper's speed and saw a drive-through of Taco Bell beaming in some distance. The large Bell logo was glittering to let passerbys know it was there. Thanking God for this unexpected attention, I got into the lane. It was a small joint. I drove the car towards the window and stopped right next to it. I didn't see anyone sitting near it. I honked the car horn, not being clear if it was closed due to bad weather or something. Still, no one came to the window. The lights were on, and as much as I could see from the car, I thought the employee must have dozed off. I was about to honk the car once again when a voice spoke. "Welcome to Taco Bell." Even though I heard the voice, I still didn't see anybody appearing in the window. Being confused, I rolled down my car window to take a sneak peek when a bald head slowly got up from the floor right in front of the window. A bony, bald man with freaky green eyes stared at me and said, "May I take your order, ma'am?" "What? You almost scared me." "Well, life is full of jump scares, isn't it?" "Yeah, no doubt." So what? Your order, ma'am." "Yeah, right. I'll have the shredded chicken burrito and a Diet Pepsi." "Fine." Being a woman in her late 30s, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters with strangers. But this man gave me a weird vibe. He was being so slow and staring at me as if he had never seen a woman before. I handed him the money when he asked me a pretty disturbing question. "It's not safe to drive at this hour alone." I have some work." Keeping my answers precise and direct, I tried to imply that it's none of his business, but the man didn't seem to get the hint that much. While counting the change, he asked again, "How much longer will you have to drive before you reach home?" "Excuse me?" "You see, the weather is bad, and a storm can come any minute now. If you want, you can come in and wait for a while." "Thank you for your concern, but I'm a big girl. I can handle things myself. Can you please hurry up on the order?" "Sure." I was shocked by his audacity, but I figured him out as a creep and nothing else. He didn't seem pleased with my reply, but I had no other option than to draw a line the way things were going. The man gave me a death stare. He then lunged close to the car to hand me over my order, when I felt his bony fingers shoving a small piece of paper with the food bag. Having enough, I was all set to scream at him when I opened that sheet, and my stomach dropped. In that small piece of paper he has written, "Someone is hiding in your back seat." I immediately looked at him, and he nodded his head with wide eyes. So this was why he was telling me to wait inside the drive-thru. I knew if I looked back, it would only cause more problems. Drops of sweat appeared on my forehead as I sensed the danger lurking. I somehow got my shit together and said, "Well, before I go, can I use the washroom?" Of course, ma'am. Please, come on in." I got down from the car and walked straight inside the drive-thru. As soon as I got in, the man locked the door behind me and said, "Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I saw someone lying in your back seat from the moment you arrived here. I was just trying to help you." I apologized to him for not taking his hit before. The man then walked to the fryer to pick up his phone lying on the desk nearby. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll call 911 right now. I've already locked the door so that he can't enter. The cops will be." He was going on, but I didn't let him finish. As he reached in front of the fryer, I lunged at him, grabbing his head and dunked his face into the boiling hot oil. A sick smile bloomed on my face as his painful screams appeared like music to my ears. He didn't even get the chance to speak, and his eyes, nose, and mouth got severely deep-fried, like those crunchy nacho fries from Taco Bell. His body flopped like a dying bird for some time, and I didn't let him go. Lucky for me, he was a bony dude, and I was stronger than him. I felt a bit sad for killing him, but trust me, I had no other way. I was headed back to a stranded location to dump a fresh body. There was indeed someone in my back seat, but he wasn't alive. After investing my entire life in my boyfriend, can you believe he didn't hesitate to cheat on me? So, I had to take my revenge. I poisoned him when he came to take his stuff from my apartment and asked for a glass of water. Now I was all set to drive to a nice location, dig up a grave in the woods and bury him with the utmost care. But this bony dude saw more than he should have. Hence, curiosity killed the cat. Now I will have to dump 2 bodies instead of 1 and destroy all the CCTV footage before leaving. Maybe the newspapers will print 2 stories of missing people in a few days or weeks, and cops will run a routine check. But I am a passive liar and a pretty accomplished psychopath. I know how to get out of this without getting any mud on me. The only thing that worries me now is the fun I just had doing all this. I can assure you that these 2 will be my last victims. This is probably the craziest incident of my life till now. But I don't think I will ever face something more bizarre than this one. I was working my usual night shifts in KFC on a Thursday. Being bored and not having any customers in the last hour, I went out to smoke. It was 2 o'clock at night. The empty highway stood in front of my eyes like a long forgotten trail. I must have taken a few drags when I heard the entrance doorbell ring. Realizing a customer had arrived, I quickly got in from the back door and headed straight to the counter. Entering the restaurant, I got shocked to see the customer who had just come in. A woman in her late 30s was standing next to the counter with a baby wrapped in her arm. Her physical appearance was so weird that I completely ignored her baby and kept looking at her. She wasn't anything like those new moms. Her clothes were so dirty that one could barely guess their actual color. She seemed like a woman who had been living on the streets for a while. As I was staring at her too widely, she understood what was going on inside my head and said, "Are you going to take my order?" Realizing how insulting I had been, I immediately made up for my behavior and politely said, "Welcome to KFC, ma'am. What would you like to order?" "That's better. Please accept my apology." "Okay. I will have a big fried chicken bucket with fries and a Pepsi to go." "Okay, ma'am. Please take your seat." She slowly walked to the table nearby and sat down, holding her baby in her arms. Realizing the baby was sleeping, I tried to be as quiet as possible. I went to the kitchen and asked our night chef to start this order. Coming back, I saw the woman staring at her baby with an affectionate smile. The smile reminded me of my mom when she used to caress my cheek before tucking me into bed. No one in this world can love you more than your mother. And seeing this woman, I couldn't help but feel a little emotional. She was kissing the baby and humming a lullaby while swinging it slowly in her arms. I felt terrible for the poor woman. Maybe she's going through a rough patch in her life, but unlike every other mom, she too wants to give her child the best. I kept watching her with the corner of my eye. It was lovely to see her caring for her baby. After 10 minutes, her food came. I placed it on a tray and started walking to her table. Seeing me approaching her, she became conscious and hugged her baby even closer to her chest. I wanted to take a sneak peek of her cute baby, but I understood she was protective of it. Also, my behavior might have scared her off a bit, so her reaction was understandable. "Here's your food, ma'am. Please enjoy and let me know if you need anything more." Holding my curiosity, I returned to the counter and gave her space to enjoy her food. Her bony structure does incline that she hasn't eaten for a while, so I didn't want to disturb her anymore. Seeing the giant bucket of chicken, her eyes dazzled in joy. She started gobbling her food. She grabbed the chicken leg and tore a huge chunk of meat. I could hear her smacking and making chomping noises as she ate so loudly. After finishing 3 chicken legs in a blink of an eye, she looked at her baby and said, "Look who's finally awake. Did I wake you up? Well, you can't eat KFC chicken quietly. No, you can't eat them. You're not old enough. I promise when you grow up, I'll bring you here, and then you can eat as many fried chickens as you want." I adored her way of talking to her baby, but I don't know why one thing kept hovering in my mind. When I went to deliver her order, a strong smell of bleach came from her. Her clothes don't seem like they'd been washed in years, so I was a bit confused why she smelled like bleach all of a sudden. While I was thinking all this, the woman talked to her baby like before. "Yes, Dad will see us soon. Till then, we have to be a good girl and listen to what Mommy says, okay?" Oh, then it's a sweet little girl. Knowing this, I finally decided that when she would come up to the counter to pay, I would ask her to let me take the baby and play with her once. I also decided to give her some cash to help her and her baby. Being a woman, I'm very well aware of the hardships of a mother, so I wanted to help this woman in my small way. The fact that the father of this baby left his wife and kid in this situation did trigger me, and I felt angry at that man. Things were going fantastic so far until something creepy happened. The woman suddenly started to shush the child, saying, "No, don't cry. Mommy's here. Don't cry, Emma. You know if you cry, I will cry too. Come on, my angel, don't cry." She got up from her seat and started to swing her baby back and forth like parents do to stop their baby from crying. Except in this case, her baby wasn't crying at all. This hit me hard as I realized that I hadn't heard the baby make a single sound since she had been here. Is this woman insane? If not, then what the hell is wrong with her? As soon as the thought struck in my mind, I said in a fumbling voice, "Ma'am? Your baby is not crying." "What do you mean she's not crying? Don't you hear her weeping?" What are you saying? There's no other sound except both of our voices. How the hell would you know? You're too young, and you certainly don't look like a mother. Leave my baby and me alone. Since I arrived here, I've seen you staring at my baby. There's no way I'm letting you get close to her. No, ma'am, I'm just trying to help you. If you... Shut up. Can't you see your voice is making her cry even louder? But your baby is not crying. She completely ignored me and started to shush her baby like before, as if it was crying. Feeling utterly confused and messed up in this entire situation, I started calling Albert, our night chef, to come out. Hearing my voice, he rushed out of the kitchen, and I explained to him the entire situation while pointing at this woman. The woman wasn't even looking at us anymore. She was just humming a lullaby and swinging her baby back and forth like Albert and I weren't even there. Not able to take the suspense anymore, we walked up to her and looked into her arms. What I saw made my skin crawl. There indeed was a baby, but it wasn't alive. Instead, it was the corpse of a dead baby with a disfigured face that had started to rot. No doubt this child had died long back, and the bleach I smelt was coming from it. By the rules of natural human life, the corpse had begun to decompose, resulting in maggots and other bacteria taking onto it. Maybe to drive them away, this woman sprinkled bleach on her baby's corpse. When the cops came and took her to the hospital, I was utterly shattered. Her senses kicked in when the paramedics explained to her how her baby was no more, and she was crying like hell. It was later revealed that this woman was homeless when a man randomly picked her up from the street, offering her money in exchange for intercourse. The man probably paid her and left, but unfortunately she became pregnant under her challenging circumstances. Even though she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, being addicted to drugs and living a degrading lifestyle, she failed to care for her. The trauma of losing her baby hit her so hard that she started to pretend that it was alive and carried the corpse in her arms wherever she went. The fact that she got some money somehow and came to KFC for food with a dead child in her arms can be the last thing to expect from any sane person. It breaks my heart that no one even bothered to help her, or at least show interest in her. I am sharing this story to reach out to the guy who slept with her without using protection and never cared to check back on her. So if you're watching this jackass, I want to tell you out loud that just because she was homeless and messed up, your disgusting behavior can never be justified. You should have at least been a man and checked on her. I hope you burn in hell. I enjoyed working the night shift at my local Domino's most of the time. There weren't many orders coming in after 8 o'clock. The town was small, sleepy, and a little boring, if I'm being truthful. That was all fine by me. The night shift paid $16 an hour and gave me ample opportunity to catch up on my reading. So, when an order came in around 10 on a freezing December night, I wasn't too thrilled to pick up the phone. I considered letting it ring out, but got nervous that it might be my boss checking up on me. I grabbed the receiver on the 5th ring. Domino's Pizza, what's up? The person on the line didn't respond at first. I heard him breathing softly, a little fast, like he was excited. Large cheese pizza. A man's voice said eventually, "That's it?" No reply. Okay, where am I taking this? The man whispered an address, then hung up before I could tell him the total cost of the order. I sighed and got up from my chair to start the pizza. Ask anybody who knows me, and they'll tell you I'm an aggressively lazy person. I don't disagree, but I try to use that to my advantage, to make myself efficient so I can get away with doing as little work as possible. I rolled out the dough, tossed it in the air a few times until it was as wide as a small bicycle wheel, then plopped it on the counter. Sauce, toppings, oven. The whole process took me less than 10 minutes. And then I was in my beat-up car on my way to deliver the order. I recognized the neighborhood my GPS directed me to immediately. My town was so small that there weren't many streets I didn't know. In fact, the address for the delivery belonged to a former high school classmate of mine, Brandon something. The voice that called into Domino's didn't sound like the guy I remembered, but it was a decade since our graduation, so whatever, people change. The house was a 2-story colonial, mundane in every way. The only odd thing was that the lights were off and there was no car in the driveway. If somebody hadn't just ordered a pizza, I would have just assumed the house was unoccupied. Nobody answered when I rang the doorbell. After 4 more rings and several minutes, I started knocking. The pizza was getting cold and I didn't want to get in trouble for a late delivery. Plus, I looked like a goofball standing there in my Domino's polo in front of a dark house. A full minute of knocking later, I decided to try the door on a whim. It was unlocked. I went back and forth for a few seconds, then decided to open the door so I could call out. "Anyone home?" I yelled, head poking in the open door. The house was pitch black. "Hey, I have a pizza here. Hello?" No reply. In for an inch, in for a mile, I figured, leaning in further to paw the wall for a light switch. When the lights clicked on and revealed the living room, I screamed. There were 2 bodies on the floor, a man and a woman, both in their late 20s or early 30s. It was difficult to tell since both corpses were missing their heads. Someone had also hacked the limbs off each body, then placed the arms and legs in a neat pile on the couch. There was blood everywhere, on the walls, soaked into the rug, even splattered on the ceiling. I ran and didn't stop running until I was inside of my car. I hit the gas and lurched forward. It was several minutes before I stopped hyperventilating enough to call 911. After the operator calmed me down, I pulled into the nearest parking lot to wait for the police. A cruiser pulled in a little later, and 2 officers took my statement. They told me another car was heading towards the house where I found the bodies. I didn't go back to work to lock up that night. Actually, I didn't so much leave my bedroom for the next week, except to use the bathroom and eat. Domino's was perpetually short-staffed at the best of times, so after 8 days of coaxing, I finally let my supervisor talk me into taking another shift. I was still rattled, but needed the money. According to the news reports, the investigation into the double homicide I discovered was still ongoing. They managed to ID the headless bodies, though the man was Brandon Myers, my former classmate. The woman was his wife. The identity of the man who ordered the pizza to their address was still unknown. I stared at the phone as it rang. It stopped after 8 rings. I counted. I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I'm not sure why I answered. I guess I didn't want to be scared of picking up a phone for the rest of my life. I reached for the receiver with trembling hands and pressed it to my ear. "Hello?" I asked. "Large cheese pizza." It was the same voice. I was frozen, unable to respond or hang up. After a pause, the voice whispered an address into my ear. Then the phone went dead with a click. I spent the next 5 minutes staring at the wall before snapping out of it. I called 911. "I think there's been a murder," I told the dispatcher. The police came to Domino's about an hour later. They'd visited the address I gave them, but couldn't find anything suspicious. The house appeared to be abandoned. They weren't able to check inside without a warrant, but performed a walk through the property and got a good look at most of the first floor through the windows. Nothing out of the ordinary. I thanked the officers and tried to get back to work. Barely 15 minutes after they left, the phone began to ring again. I watched the receiver vibrate in its cradle like a rattlesnake, threatening to bite if I got too close. Once again, I couldn't help myself. I had to know who was calling. "What do you want?" I asked. Silence. Quick breathing. Then the man's voice again, with the same order and same address. The ones the cops just visited. "Who are you?" I asked, but he'd already hung up. I weighed my options. If I sent the police over there again and they found nothing, they might not answer the call next time. But if I delivered the pizza and found another gruesome crime scene, I wasn't sure my sanity could take it. I ignored the order, but had a strong hunch the man would keep calling. I made a decision. I wouldn't live in fear. Instead of making the pizza, though, I went behind the counter. We kept a taser under the cash register at Domino's, just in case a psycho came in and the staff needed to protect themselves before police could arrive. I hid the taser in an empty pizza box, went out to my car, and started driving. When I pulled up to the address the mystery caller provided, I could see why the police thought the house was abandoned. Kudzu and vines crawled up one side of the single-story rancher. There were shingles missing from the roof, and one of the windows had a massive crack in the glass. I approached the weather-beaten door with my pizza and knocked. There was no doorbell. The door swung open on my third knock. Just like the last time, the interior of the house was dark. Delivery? I called out. There was a sudden movement from the darkness to my left. A shadow darker than the rest, moving fast. I barely had time to react. Somehow, I managed to grab the taser from the box and fire it into the shape as it rushed me. There was the click-a-click of the prongs activating, pouring electricity into the wires hooked to the thing attacking me. The shadow screamed, tripping and falling into the rectangle of light that came from my headlights and the open door. It was a man, tall and scrawny, dressed in denim and flannel. He had wild gray hair and a black beard, and the most hateful eyes I'd ever seen. The stranger tried to get up, pawing at the taser prongs hooked to his chest. Before he could pull them out, I hit him with another dose of electricity, then another. He collapsed to thrash on the floor, muscles convulsing, back bending. I kept the hooks in him while I called 911, but he looked like he'd passed out. The cops were there in 7. I remember. I counted. It was the longest 7 minutes of my life. I found out later through a friend on the police force just how lucky I was that night. When the cops searched the house, they found a kill room in the basement. The stranger had covered the space in clear plastic sheeting and dragged a table into the middle of the room. He brought tools with him: a hacksaw, knives, shears, duct tape, zip ties, and bleach. But it was the deranged man's confession that was truly chilling. He casually told the cops every terrible thing he planned to do to me. He'd pull me apart just like he'd done to the couple I'd found murdered a week before. Then, once he'd arranged my corpse just how he wanted it, he'd call in a delivery order. That was his fetish, making innocent people discover his victims. If I hadn't acted fast with the taser, I would have been killed and laid out on the floor like a department store display. Then some poor Chinese takeout driver or subrunner would have been called to the house to find my brutalized remains. I don't work at Domino's anymore. I found a safer job, fighting forest fires. It makes my skin crawl when I recall this incident. Just to be popular on social media, people are willing to go to any extent. I was working at the fast food chain Wendy's when this incident took place. I was 19 years old, a high school dropout, trying my hand at anything and everything to earn some cash back then. A friend of mine got me this job. It was a small outlet near the highway, so most of our customers were truckers and people driving by the road. I generally worked in the morning shift, but whenever I needed cash, I did some overtime. The night shifts never caused me any issue or worry, so I was more than willing to work late at night. Also, the payment was high for night shifts, hence, I couldn't say no to that. I lived in a small studio apartment and drove to work in my brother's old scooter that he gave me before leaving for college. It was a warm Friday night, and I was on my way to my night shift. I wanted to see my parents that weekend, so I decided to get extra cash for the upcoming expenditures. My dad's birthday was knocking on the door, and I planned to buy him something nice with that additional payment. There wasn't much traffic on the highway. On my 15 minutes ride, I could only see 2 cars and 1 truck pass by. We don't get many customers late night, so, in a way, I preferred night shifts, as there was less work. I parked my scooter and entered the restaurant. The evening shift employee handed me over the keys and left for home. Our night chef was working in the kitchen, so I sat behind the counter and waited for a customer to arrive. After half an hour, 2 truckers came in and bought some barbecue cheeseburgers. I was handing them the order when another customer entered the store. A woman in her late 30s walked to the nearest table and sat down. She had a backpack which she placed next to her and stared at me with wide eyes. Her creepy, cold stare made me realize she wanted me to come and take her order. Generally, most people come to the counter and give their orders, but she probably wanted the VIP treatment. Being young and a beginner at this job, I didn't want to create any trouble. So after the truckers left, I walked to her table. "Welcome to Wendy's. May I take your order?" "1 Baconator combo, 2 cheeseburgers, a large bucket of spicy chicken, 1 large fries, 20-piece spicy nuggets, and 1 lemonade large. Make it quick, I don't have all night. Sure, ma'am. Even though she was overly rude, I still gave a humble smile and walked to the kitchen with this huge order. The woman didn't tell me to parcel them, so I guess she will only eat them here. As I came back to the counter, I saw her setting up a camera right in front of her. She then tried to tie her messy hair into a bun and started putting blood-red lipstick on. It didn't take me time to understand that she was gonna record a mukbang video right here. These eating ASMR videos are now a big deal on the internet, and I follow many mukbangers, but this was my first time to see one face to face. There was no reason I could stop her from doing it because, in a way, she was advertising Wendy's food. So I kept quiet and watched her pulling off this show. After 20 minutes, the chef and I placed all the food on her table. Chef Burton was surprised to see this woman, but we both kept quiet as she bought a large amount of food from us. Chef went back to the kitchen and I sat down to watch what she did next. She pressed the play button and the recording started. She said in a creepy, squeaky voice, "Hello guys, tonight's menu is Wendy's. As you can see, I have so many foods ahead of me. There will be a big surprise at the end, so do watch the entire video. I'll eat now." Saying this, she grabbed a handful of fries and shoved them inside her mouth. The amount was too much, so most of the fries were hanging out of her mouth as she struggled to chew them. After finishing it, she bit a large chunk of the cheeseburger and shoved some spicy nuggets along with that. The way she was eating was disgusting to watch. I could see saliva mixed with food dripping from her mouth. She went on eating like this, and I thought, who would like to watch such a sickening mukbang video? Her ways of eating food were enough to make any viewers nauseous. After finishing her fries, cheeseburger, and the Baconator combo, she went for the spicy chicken. She grabbed the sizable, saucy piece of chicken and started licking it while staring directly at the camera. She was laughing in between as if it was funny, when, in reality, it wasn't. I was secretly wishing that she would leave, but she seemed pretty comfortable in doing all this creepy stuff. Her face got smeared in the red sauce, so did her hands, and she ate the chicken like a hungry wolf. Her bright eyes made her face appear like a demon, and red sauce seemed like blood on her mouth. In front of my eyes, she finished all the food while smiling like a freak. I was relieved that now she would finally leave, but what she did next was beyond my imagination. She said in her squeaky voice once again, "Now it's time for the big surprise, guys, that you all have been waiting for." Ooh, she grabbed the empty chicken bucket and started vomiting in it, putting her fingers in her mouth. She was gagging herself forcefully and vomiting in front of the camera. Her eyes went backwards as she choked herself. What the hell? What the hell are you doing? Don't disturb me. She vomited like crazy, and I was in shock to witness. After filling the bucket with her vomit, she wiped her face and hands with a tissue paper. Then, like nothing happened, she grabbed the entire bucket and started drinking her vomit. I couldn't take it anymore and called Chef Burton. Hearing my scream, he rushed in and saw the woman doing the unthinkable. We screamed at her to stop, but she wasn't stopping. Finishing that goo liquid in one go, she wiped her face for one last time and smiled at the camera again. That's all for today, guys. I'll be back again. We stood behind the counter, frozen in shock and disgusted, as we never expected anyone to eat their own vomit. She turned off the camera and started sipping the lemonade as if nothing happened. She must have taken 2 or 3 sips when suddenly she got up coughing. Her eyes were turned backwards and she coughed terribly. Oh my God, she's choking on her vomit. Call the paramedics, now. I started calling the paramedics with trembling hands while Chef Burton ran towards her and started patting her back to stop her from choking. But she was gagging for real now, and I could see the pain in her face. Her face was turning blue, as if she couldn't breathe anymore. Not knowing how to help her, Chef Burton and I couldn't do anything but watch this woman die. She collapsed on the floor, grabbing her neck and coughing terribly. When the paramedics came, it was all over. The woman was lying on the floor with her mouth wide open and eyes rolled up. She even peed herself from the trauma of the situation. The cops came in and saw the entire video and the CCTV footage. They realized that this woman was crazy and killed herself. We could do nothing to save her, so Chef Burton and I both left the job, and it was too much to go back to work, recalling that horrible memory. I don't watch mukbang videos anymore, as they remind me of that terrifying night shift at Wendy's. I hope people stop running behind popularity, as too much of anything can destroy your life forever, or even kill you. It was Christmas Eve, 2001. I was 6 years old at the time. My parents had gone to the store in town to grab some last-minute supplies for Christmas. They'd left me in the barely capable hands of my older brother. I was downstairs in the living room watching some cartoons on TV, while he was upstairs in his room listening to metal. As I'm sitting there, watching Dexter's Lab, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. Passing by my living room window was a guy in a big, floppy red hat. He stopped at the window and looked in at me. It was a man dressed up in a cheap Santa suit. He had the big, fake white beard and everything, even a large sack slung over his shoulder. Now, to my childish mind, this really was Santa paying me a visit. Still, even then, I knew something was off. What unsettled me about him as he stared in through the window at me were his eyes. They looked sickly and yellow, with dark bags hanging under them. His cheeks were sunken, and he didn't exactly look like the holly jolly jelly belly Santa I imagined growing up. He looked in at me for an uncomfortably long amount of time, and I looked back. Rather than be filled with joy, I just felt uncomfortable. But being so young, I didn't exactly know how to react. Santa was a good guy, right? While looking in, he motioned towards our front door, as if to say, "Let me in." I got up off the couch and walked into the hallway. I unlocked the door, but didn't touch the screen door in front of it like my parents had taught me. As such, there was still a thin layer between myself and the Santa now standing on my porch. Oh, oh, oh. Why, hello there, little boy. Merry Christmas. And what's your name? Michael. I remember feeling confused that he didn't know my name. I always thought Santa knew every kid's name. Wasn't he supposed to have a list? Oh, oh, oh. Nice to meet you, Michael. Do you know who I am? I nodded yes. Well, I've heard you've been a very good boy this year, so I brought you this. He dipped his hands into the sack and pulled out a wrapped present, held it out in front of him as if to say, "Come and get it." Being so young and naive, I was tempted to open the screen door and take the gift, but my parents had drilled stranger danger into me hard, to the point where I didn't even trust Santa Claus. All I could think to do was tell Santa that he had come too early and that he should come back at nighttime like he was supposed to. Put the present under our tree, you know? Calm down, Michael. Open up and come and get your present. It's a doozy. The temptation was strong. I wanted the present, obviously. My imagination ran away with me, thinking about which new cool toy it could be. But I needed permission. I shouted up to my brother, "Daniel, come down here real quick." I'll never forget how that Santa's eyes widened as I shouted that upstairs. Without hesitation, he turned and walked away. He hopped into a van outside our house that still had its engine running. All I could think was, where are the reindeer? Within moments of getting in, he drove off down the road, never to be seen again. Not by me, at least. My brother hadn't even heard me shouting because of the metal he was blasting. When my parents came back, I told them about the Santa that came to visit. They thought I was just pretending or playing a game. A couple of days after Christmas, the news broke out. An 8-year-old boy in our town had disappeared from his house after his parents ran to the stores. They had only left him alone for 10 minutes. They never found him. My folks believed my story after that and never left me alone with my brother again. I thank my lucky stars we had that screen door in my home. I have had my fair share of weird and scary incidents in my life, but this particular one stands out without any doubt. Because of this incident, every Christmas when someone gives me a present, my heart stops for a while, thinking it. I have to unwrap it. I was 10 years old, and it was the last Christmas I had with my cat, Pillow. Guessing from the name, I'm sure you have understood Pillow was a cute, furry cat. I wanted a pet dog, but we found Pillow on the pavement one day. So my mom and I brought him home to live with us. He was a very hyperactive cat, always running and chasing things around the house. I remember that Christmas, we saw the maximum snowfall in Rochester. So, it was Christmas Eve. I was having the traditional Christmas dinner with my family. There was stuffing, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, eggnog, ham, and fruitcake. I was eating as much as I could when the doorbell rang. Due to the heavy snowfall outside, our community had to cancel the neighborhood Christmas party. So it was a small celebration that resided in every individual's home. Hearing the doorbell, my dad got up to answer it. My mom and I kept eating and heard Dad opening the main door, then pausing for a while. Generally, we expect a conversation once you answer a door, but that didn't happen in this case. My dad didn't say a single thing for at least a minute or two, and then he closed the door abruptly. With this awkward silence, only Pillow growled, staring at the corridor. As my dad entered the living room, I noticed he had a present in his hands. A cardboard box wrapped with a shiny red gift wrapper and a green bow tied on top. The gift looked too Christmassy to me, if you get my meaning. My dad placed the box right in front of my plate and said, "Someone left you a Christmas gift, Peter. It seems like you have a secret friend." I was surprised because I'd only exchanged presents with my friends a day ago, and there was no one else left to send me gifts amidst the snowstorm. There was a name card attached to the ribbon. It read, "Merry Christmas, Peter." "Well, open and take a look," my mom said with a smile. After opening it, I found a giant cookie jar looking like the head of a Grinch, filled with dark chocolate chip cookies. Like most of the kids, I never liked the Grinch. The weird-looking creature with a scary-ass smile always felt intimidating. The Grinch in the cookie jar had an even more disturbing smile than movies, and its eyes were yellow with a black dot in them. The gaze was so off-putting that even my mom said, "This is an unusual gift. It looks so creepy. Who could have left it on our doorstep?" My dad replied, "I don't know. There was no one as far as I could see." She shrugged her shoulders and kept the cookie jar in the middle of the table. Even though I wouldn't say I liked it, I couldn't control myself from having a chocolate cookie. After finishing my dinner, I took a giant-sized cookie and went to bed, kissing my parents goodnight. I ate it while staring at the snowfall outside my window. I was shocked at how delicious this cookie was. The chocolate chips almost melted inside my mouth. Being happy and thankful for all the gifts, I got under my warm blanket for a night of deep sleep. I woke up feeling thirsty. Finding the jug empty, I got up to go to the kitchen, I was still in a state of drowsiness as I woke up abruptly. I was about to take the first step down the stairs when I saw a human figure sitting at the bottom of the stairs in a frog-like position and staring at me. I don't think I will ever forget the eyes. It was a pair of glowing yellow eyes on a filthy green face. It was the Grinch gazing at me. I almost shit my pants. Realizing this, and what happened next happened so quickly, I still fail to explain it adequately. The Grinch gave me a big, toothy smile and slowly stood up. I began to shake in fear, and before I could do anything, the Grinch figure started to climb the stairs at full speed, stretching his hands towards me. I screamed and ran towards my parents' bedroom. I could hear heavy footsteps rushing at me. As I bumped into their room, my parents woke up hearing the chaos. What's going on? What happened, Peter? He was behind me. He was real. I told my parents everything I experienced a few moments back and hugged my mom, sobbing aloud. My mom patted my back and my dad searched the entire house to assure me it was all a bad dream, a mere hallucination that tricked my mind. No one believed me as usual, and the matter escalated further. From that night, I started to avoid the Grinch head. I didn't eat one more cookie from that jar, so my mom gave it to the neighbor kids whenever they came over to play with me. A week went by, and the cookies were gone, leaving that empty jar resting on our table. I asked my mom if we could get rid of it, as it has no use now. She realized I was still scared. Okay, take this and put it in the garage. I grabbed it immediately and ran to keep it in the garage, shoving it into a rusty shelf in the corner. I was coming back when I noticed a big cut in the palm of my right hand. Something sharp cut me deep and I was bleeding, but I didn't even realize. Drops of blood got smeared on the Grinch face, making it look even scarier than before. I didn't say anything to anyone and ignored it. I was relieved that now I wouldn't have to see that ugly thing walking around the house. Nothing happened that night. The following day, I was helping my dad set up the fireplace when my eyes went to the table accidentally, and it was back where it was. The Grinch cookie jar was sitting in the middle of the table and staring at me as it did. Who put it here? Mom, why are you shouting, Peter? What's the matter? I pointed at the jar and she stood there, completely clueless. I didn't keep it there. David, is it you? You know your son has a bad dream. Saying this, my mom picked it up and threw it in the trash. My dad said that he had nothing to do with this sudden incident. I believed him. Slowly but gradually, I started to understand this cookie jar was cursed. I watched my dad empty our trash in the bin outside that night. I was finally at peace that this jar would be gone in the morning. Only if I knew what horrible nightmare awaited me. I was sleeping in my room when I heard footsteps outside. I came out and saw my mom walking down the stairs in an unsettling way. Her long hair was dangling in the air, and her white nightgown swept the floor like a broom. Every step she took appeared a bit robotic to me. I followed her, and as we came downstairs, she stopped. I went in front of her and saw her face was extremely pale, and her eyes were closed. This was the first time I saw my mom sleepwalk. Mom? She then opened her eyes and looked at me. Her eyeballs looked the same as the Grinch on the cookie jar. She smiled terrifyingly and said, "Merry Christmas, Peter." She then grabbed her head with both hands and twisted it in one go. The crackling sound of her bones breaking still ring in my ears. What was beyond horrifying was even though her head had turned back completely, she still kept standing there. The smile on my mom's face didn't feel like her at all. Pillow jumped on her as she stretched her hands at me, and whatever was inside her did the same thing to Pillow as she did to herself a few moments back. Pillow whined in pain and then got silenced forever. I screamed and fainted on the floor. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the hospital bed with my dad sitting next to me. He was in tears, and I knew why. I knew my mom was no more. Pillow was no more. It's all because of that cursed cookie jar. But what he told me shocked me like hell. My dad came down hearing my scream and found my mom laying on the edge of the stairs with her neck broken like a twig. Pillow was also found near her, dead. Somehow his neck got broken too. Doctors and cops think my mom fell down the stairs during a sleepwalking episode and somehow landed on my cat that accidentally killed it as well. For me, I was just a victim of a severe trauma, discovering my mom's and my cat's dead body all together. The cookie jar went missing right after these deaths. It's been a long time now, and my dad has passed away as well. I currently live in Nebraska with my wife and daughter. I never told them about any of these incidents. They know the same thing as everyone else. It was all an unfortunate accident. But I know it was the Grinch on that cookie jar who stole my spirit of Christmas forever. Wake up, Charlie, wake up. My brother Noah constantly kept pushing me to get up. What is it? Let me sleep. It's Christmas. Wake up. I understood he was not going to let me sleep anymore. Reluctantly, I came out from the warm blanket and looked out the window. The world outside my window was covered with a crystal white snow. Christmas is indeed the time of joy. Noah stood beside me with a big smile. I smiled back and said, "Merry Christmas." He hugged me while giggling sweetly. We came downstairs and saw Mom decorating the Christmas tree. "You two up already? Merry Christmas, my babies." Noah started running around the house, and I asked Mom, "Will Dad join us today?" The light of joy in my mom's face wore off immediately. "I don't think that will be a good idea." "What happened last night, Mom?" "What do you mean, Charlie?" "I heard you and Dad fight last night." Mom hesitated for a while. I could see a cloud of pain turning her face pale. She said in a calm but hopeless voice, "You're a big boy now, Charlie. There's something I'd better tell you. Your dad and I will no longer be together. I'll let you know more once Nana comes." "Nana's coming here?" "Yes, she will come tonight, and tomorrow we will leave for Jacksonville to live with your uncle for a while." Amidst the joy of holidays, I realized my parents would get a divorce. Even though I could feel the tension, I couldn't grasp why they decided to split up. Being an 11-year-old, all I could think is that once you grow up, reality hits you hard. My mom requested me not to mention any of this to Noah. I wasn't going to anyway. Noah and I sat down for our breakfast. Mom made us chocolate pancakes. "Mom, what are we going to do tonight?" Noah asked enthusiastically. "Well, you'll be playing with your brother while I go to the airport to get Nana, and then we will go for a trip." "And Dad?" Yeah, he will join later." "Yeah, this is going to be the best Christmas ever." "Yes, sweetie." I was very much aware that Dad wouldn't be spending Christmas with us. He might be with his friends, preparing himself to get through this divorce. What made me angry was that he didn't even say goodbye to us or see us before leaving. Thinking all this and burning in my own rage, I spent the entire day killing people in video games. Noah was busy with Mom hanging Christmas balls on the tree. I felt both didn't care that Dad was not home on this special day with us for a moment. I finally decided to ignore all that and talk to my dad when I saw him. Around 6:30, my mom left for the airport to pick up Nana, and it was just my little brother in the house and me. It wasn't the first time we were home alone. We live in a close neighborhood, so it was safe. Noah came and started bugging me to play with him just when our doorbell rang. I went to the main door and looked through the eye hole. A man dressed as Santa was standing on the other side. His clothes were pretty dirty, and the long Santa beard had stains on it. Without opening the door, I asked, "What do you want?" "I'm Santa. I came here with gifts for you." "Dad, is that you?" "Ho, ho, 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 ho. Seems like you caught me, Charlie." Being excited and enthralled with joy, I opened the door and hugged him tightly. My dad hugged me back. I could hear Noah yelling, "Dad, Dad, you're home." "Where were you the entire day, Dad?" "I went to get some gifts for you guys." "What did you bring for me?" "It's a big surprise." My dad stepped in and took off his Santa hat. His hair was all messed up, and I could see a weird look in his eyes. What even shocked me more was his careless behavior towards a difficult situation. He fought with Mom, then didn't come home the entire day, but he behaved like everything was fine. He took out 2 gift boxes and handed them to Noah and me. Noah immediately rushed to his room to get the paper knife to open his present. Taking that window of opportunity, I asked Dad, "What happened to you and Mom?" "She said you won't be living with us for now." "What else did your mom say?" She said we would live with Uncle Jim for a while. Nana is coming here tonight. Mom went to the airport to pick her up. Well, everything is going to be just fine. Don't worry. Dad is here, and he's going to solve the problem tonight." "So, you guys won't get a divorce?" "Of course not, Charlie. I love your mom, and I'll prove that tonight." Noah came running before I could talk about this more. "I got a toy gun. What did you get, Charlie?" "Not now, Noah." "But Dad, Mom said..." "Oh, Charlie, you worry so much. Let's forget about all this and enjoy our own until Mom comes back. Come on, who's up for a game of hide and seek, huh?" Me. My dad laughed, and Noah started to pull me to start this game of hide and seek. Even though I was baffled, I decided to put on a happy face and play a stupid game for the sake of my little brother's happiness. I was all ready to ask Mom and Dad what the hell was going on when she returned home. My dad faced the wall and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. But remember, you both can't hide in the same place. I hid in my closet, and Noah hid under his bed. I waited for Dad to find me soon, but 5 minutes went by, and I didn't hear him enter my room. I still waited, sitting inside the closet. 15 minutes went by, and he still didn't come looking for me. I couldn't sit back anymore, so I went out of the closet screaming, "Dad, are we still playing?" But I didn't get any reply. I expected to hear Noah yelling as I ruined the game, but he didn't make a sound either. I went to his room and looked under his bed. Noah was not there. Thinking he and Dad might be chilling in the living room, I walked past the corridor and stopped. My eyes went to the floor first. The entire wooden floor was smeared with fresh blood. Its solid metallic smell choked my voice, and I lifted my face. My dad was standing near the Christmas tree, humming a melody and decorating the Christmas tree. "Dad, what's..." "Oh, there you are. How does the tree look now, Charlie?" What I saw swept the ground beneath my feet. Severed body parts that once belonged to my little brother Noah hung like bells from our Christmas tree. My dad laughed and said, "I told you Daddy would solve all the problems. What have you done?" I solved the problem, Charlie. Look, Noah was the problem. He's not your little brother. He's not even my son. He's my brother's son, with whom your mom slept with in my absence. But don't worry, I still love her, and I forgave her. But we can't move on if the consequences of her mistakes keeps running around the house in front of my eyes. So Noah had to go. Now you, your mother, and I, we all can live happily ever after. Merry Christmas. Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer. Oh. On Christmas Eve in 1989, I was traveling through Mexico City in my boyfriend's car. He was driving and I was navigating. There were Christmas decorations up along the streets and most of the traffic was moving at a snail's pace, taking care not to hit the dense pockets of people walking up and down the street. We were in a hurry though, so my boyfriend turned off one of the main roads and we cut down a side street to avoid the congestion. We made a few more turns and suddenly stopped when we realized we didn't have a clue where we were. I opened the map while my boyfriend put the car in park and lit up a cigarette. I was tracing our route on the map to backtrack us when something struck our car hard on the front side right next to me. I caught a glimpse of a figure slam into our windshield and bounce forward off the car. I cried out in shock while my boyfriend stuffed his cigarette in the ashtray and stepped out of the car. This is where the experience became strange. I've never shared this before with anyone other than my closest friends and family who I trust. While my boyfriend was coming out of the car, I saw the figure who struck us stand up awkwardly, holding his head and limp across the street. My boyfriend completely ignored it and bent down to look at the front of the car. I rolled down my window and called out, "Hey," to the man as he limped away. My boyfriend, thinking I was yelling at him, called back to me, "Don't get out." I called back, "What? Why?" And my boyfriend stood back up and I noticed blood on his pants from where he had knelt down. "He's dead," my boyfriend said, and he rubbed his face. "What? No, he's not. I turned and started to point in the direction the man had looked away in, but he was gone. I got out of the car and stood up. I saw enough to understand what my boyfriend meant. The man we had struck had flipped off the windshield and caught his head in a storm drain. His neck was very clearly broken and he was bleeding heavily from 2 different compound fractures in his legs where he had struck our car with his bike. The bike itself was lying on its side by my feet, the front wheel bent sideways and the back wheel still spinning. I was in shock and kept jerking my head back and forth down the street the man had looked down on and the figure at my feet. It didn't make sense. They were wearing the exact same clothes. "How many people did we hit?" I asked my boyfriend. He looked at me like I had hit my head. "Only one," he replied. Then he started waving his arms to flag down a police car. I sat down on the sidewalk and stared at the ground, feeling like I was going to be sick. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't seen a ghost because I had seen the shadow of the man cast on the stone wall behind him as he stood up and limped away. But there he was. The exact same man who had stood up right there on the ground in front of our car. The police blocked off the area, examined the bike and our cracked windshield and determined the guy had been speeding down the hill on his bike and struck us without applying the brakes. They asked me what I saw and the best that I could do was stammer that it happened so fast. I thought we had hit 2 people. We got a ride from a family member to my boyfriend's house, but I was still in such a state of shock that I couldn't even touch the dinner that had been prepared for us. People have since asked if the man who stood up was bloody or if I could see the whites of his eyes. Honestly, I don't recall seeing either. All I could say with certainty is that he stood up, held his right hand to his head and limped away. He didn't react to my boyfriend stepping out of the car. I don't know if I believe in ghosts or life after death, but if that's the case, this man was physically reacting to the impact that had killed him, seeming not to have noticed that he was dead. Occasionally I dream about that night and that impact, but in the dream I never see the man stand back up. I see a bright flash of lights and then nothing. No details of the man himself after the hit. I never even found out the man's name. It was the worst Christmas of my life. Did the boy say anything? Not yet, sir. The kid is terrified. Whatever he saw last night had given him a shock of life. Agent Palmer and Officer Brooks were talking amongst themselves, standing outside the hospital cabin in Cottontown, Nashville. It's been a week since FBI agent Marshall Palmer had come to this small city in Nashville. But this isn't a travel trip. The people of Cottontown are terrified to drive by the woods because something dangerous lurks in them. In the last month, 3 people have been found dead. There's no clue why. The only thing that is known to be common about these dead bodies are: 1. They all went to the pub near the highway, and after getting drunk, got in their cars to drive home. And 2. Somehow they lost control of their car and crashed into a tree. But their death wasn't just mere result of drunk driving. They were all murdered in a barbaric way. All their necks were slit with a sharp weapon, and their faces were cut off. The people of Cottontown are terrified to go near the woods or even use the highway at night. Whatever is out there, following people from the highway pub and then killing them and cutting their faces off. Not being able to crack this horrifying murder case, Sheriff Brooks had no other way than to ask for help from the higher authorities, and they sent Agent Palmer to solve this case that looks like a serial killing. The boy they were talking about a few moments back was Gregory Cruz, whose brother is now the 4th victim. The poor kid was found unconscious on the back of his brother's truck, while his brother lay dead in this awful way in the front seat. He is the first eyewitness who can tell what exactly happened during their ride. A nurse came and informed Agent Palmer that the boy is now ready to talk. It may have stopped shaking, but his eyes are still wide in fear. Drops of sweat can be seen on his forehead. Agent Palmer sat next to his bed while Sheriff Brooks stood right beside him. "Hi, Gregory. I'm Agent Palmer. How are you feeling now? Where is my mom?" "She's on her way. Do you want some water?" "No." "Can I ask you some questions? It's very important, Gregory." "Okay. Can you tell me what happened last night?" Gregory's face lit up in fear once again, but Sheriff Brooks said, "You are safe now. Don't be scared." Hearing this, Gregory said, "Matt snuck out of the house last night, taking Dad's car. I wanted to go with him, but he said no. So I hid in the back seat. He stopped near the pub and bought drinks. I knew he was drinking in the car, but I still kept quiet. I never get to leave the house at night, so I was enjoying the late night ride while lying in the back seat. Everything was fine. Until we got onto the highway." "What happened on the highway?" "That man, the scary mask, came out and Matt hit the car in the tree. Then that man, what did he do, Gregory?" "He came running to the car. He didn't notice me in the back and killed Matt with a knife. I couldn't scream. I saw him cutting my brother's face. Saying this, Gregory couldn't hold back his tears anymore. After all, he is just a 12-year-old boy. How much can the poor soul take? Officer Brooks and Agent Palmer didn't ask him any more questions. Gregory's mom came inside with Pastor Curtis. She was devastated, as she lost her one son and found the other one in such a traumatized state. Pastor Curtis looked at them and said in an off-putting tone, "Let this poor kid breathe, officer. We are only doing our jobs, Pastor." Hearing this prompt reply from Agent Palmer, Pastor Curtis didn't say anything and walked to bless Gregory for better health. Agent Palmer came out with a worried face. This has to stop. There's no doubt that a psycho killer is out there and killing people who are drunk driving. But why? Is it easy to trap drunk drivers? What should we do now? Brooks, send a sketcher to Gregory so we can describe how the killer looks like. But sir, Gregory said he was wearing a mask. Yeah, well at least we would know what kind of mask it is. I have to go to forensics now. He'd be there with the sketch in an hour. Agent Palmer left the hospital and drove to the forensics lab. Dr. Scott was in his lab when Agent Palmer stormed inside through the glass door. Dr. Scott said in a careless tone, "Hello, Agent. You are late." Ignoring his mockery, Agent Palmer dived right into business. "So what do you got here?" Well, like the first 3 bodies, he too was under the hold of alcohol. But he wasn't that drunk to lose control of the car. I don't understand why these victims drove into a tree all of a sudden. Because something came in their way, and they tried their best not to run over it. What came their way? The man who was killing them and cutting off their faces. Well, who would want to do that? Someone who wants to punish people if they drive in a drunken state. They went on discussing on this matter, and after some time, Sheriff Brooks entered the lab with a pale face. Like he has found something extremely shocking. He handed a folded paper to Agent Palmer and stood like a statue. What? What is it? As Agent Palmer opened the paper, his eyes widened in shock as well. The killer that Gregory has described is indeed wearing a mask, but his mask looked like Ruth Brown, the second victim of this killer. The man in the picture was wearing a ragged old jacket and tattered trousers, and he had a hunting knife in his hand. It didn't take long for Agent Palmer to understand that this killer is not only cutting off the victims' faces, but also wearing them in his next kills. This one is a sick psycho. We have to catch him, sir. Enough is enough now. Agent Palmer nodded his head and said, "Let's go. I have a plan." They called out to the entire unit and told everyone to meet at the police station in 10 minutes. When they all gathered at the station, Agent Palmer addressed the team. "Tomorrow night, one of us will be driving by the high road alone in an old truck. Brooks and I will be hiding in the back of the truck under a rug. The rest of you will be following us, but keep a safe distance so that no one realizes we all know each other. Everybody in casual clothing, and don't take your cop cars. Meet me here at midnight. Remember, if you fail to catch the killer today, we might never know who is under these human masks. Our one mistake can set the killer free forever." The day grew to be tenser. The police kept this operation secret. The people of the town had no idea that tonight, when their fates rest at the hands of Agent Palmer and Sheriff Brooks. Agent Palmer and Sheriff Brooks hid under the dirty rug as Officer Fanning drove an old truck. He sprinkled a lot of whiskey on the car seat as well as his clothes. The smell of strong alcohol was all over the air. Agent Palmer knew this killer was only choosing drunk drivers, so this was just another way to make the trap stronger. Officer Fanning started to speed up the car, pretending to be an intoxicated person. Except for the headlights of the car, there was no other light on the road. He was about to drive past a big oak tree when a man dressed like Leatherface jumped from the bushes and came running towards his car holding a big hunting knife. Getting startled by this, Officer Fanning tried to overtake him and pulled the brake, creating a loud creak. The truck stopped on the sideway, and the man lunged on the driver's side window. Before Officer Fanning could take out his gun, the killer raised his knife, aiming for his neck. But he wasn't expecting what was about to happen next. Agent Palmer and Sheriff Brooks jumped out of the car immediately. Sheriff Brooks shot at the man's hand, and the knife fell off. The rest of the cop cars came in full speed in the other car, and the three officers pinned down the killer on the road. Agent Palmer walked close to him and flashed the light in his face. This time, he was wearing the face of Matt Cruz, the recent and last victim of this killer. Taking the bullet in his right hand, the man was growling like an injured wolf. Palmer took off the skinny layer, and the killer's face was finally revealed. Pastor Curtis, is that you? Yes, it's me. Where were you guys when my Norma died? Where were your concerns and duties? You did nothing. You closed the case in accident. No one tried to catch that drunk driver who ran her over on the way home. I will kill them all. These drunkenheads deserve to die. Let me go. The story unfolded that 2 years back, Pastor Curtis's 14-year-old daughter Norma was walking home after her bike tires got punctured. She was on the highway, hoping to look for a ride home, when a drunk driver lost control of his car, and he ran her over. Due to no evidence and information about this car, her case got declared as an accident. When Pastor Curtis himself failed to find the murderer of his daughter, he decided to take revenge on anyone who drove drunk on the highway at night. The cops took him into custody so that this ferocious killer can be put behind bars forever. The day Agent Palmer left Cottontown, Sheriff Brooks and his team thanked him for helping them catch his killer. Sheriff Brooks shook his hand and said, "We hope to see you again, Palmer. Well, you will see me if this killer ever gets set free. And I hope that day never arrives." Every year around October, our local cinema hosts a week-long marathon showing all the classic horror movies ranging back to the 1950s. It's a niche event that mostly attracts hardcore movie nerds and couples looking for a cliché place to fool rounds. My friends, Tommy, Zach, and I attended each year. Even though we've seen all the movies 100 times before, we never miss it. We just sneak in a few bottles of whiskey alongside the snacks, sit in the back and enjoy the show. The gate runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which means people can walk in at any point to catch a movie. All one has to get is the week pass, which we always get. Alas, the usual location had been flooded in the storm, which meant the event would be hosted in a different location at a cinema called Theater de la Morts. It was situated some distance outside of town, and the building itself had been on an ancient movie theater from the 50s. We were excited to see how the old-timey theater looked like, but due to the distance and without a designated driver, we were forced to book a taxi to the location. It seemed oddly barren by the time we arrived, which made it easy enough to sneak the snacks and alcohol inside. By then the show had already started and was playing a classic, Night of the Living Dead. Due to the older projector not being able to illuminate the entire room, it was darker than usual, but we could still see the silhouette of the audience, all silently staring at the movie. I'd expected a tad more noise, but they all seemed captivated by the screen. We sat ourselves towards the back despite having several front seats available. It made it easier to sneak a sip of the drinks we brought with us, as well as whispering among ourselves when we inevitably got bored. During the first hour or two, we were able to keep focus, but as the alcohol kicked in and the movie changed to something less exciting, we couldn't contain ourselves any longer. We started joking around, quiet at first, but as we got more and more inebriated, we got louder. I felt like an ass the entire time, and I was starting to worry that we might get kicked out, but no one said a word. Apart from ourselves, The entire crowd was silent, staring as if hypnotized by the movie. Hey, isn't it weirdly quiet here? Tommy finally asked. I just nodded. Look, no one has even gone to the toilet or even coughed since we got here. He continued. So what, they're watching the movie? Zach chimed in, chuckling. No, I'm serious, something's wrong. Though tipsy, the eeriness of the situation was enough to sober me right up. I glanced over at the audience, finally noticing just how quiet they really were. None of them moved. They didn't even seem to be breathing. I reached up my hand and gently tapped the shoulder of a person sitting in front of us. Tall man by the look of it. Hey, everything all right? I asked in merely a whisper. No response, not as much as a twitch. I patted him a bit firmer on the back. Still nothing. What the hell is going on? Tommy asked. At that point, I straight up pushed the man. His head fell limply forward, but the man remained in his seat. I pulled up my phone to use a flashlight, and I walked around to the man's row, shined the light on him, in frozen shock as I finally saw him clearly. For the first time, his face, or lack thereof, had been replaced by a fleshy mess of muscle, fat, and veins. It was almost as if someone had put him through a meat grinder, only to poorly put him back together. Fuck, fuck, fuck. I screamed in panic. What? He's... I stuttered. Heath Watts. Dead. I'd been pretty loud for the past minute, just trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Still, not a single audience member seemed to even acknowledge our presence. A horrific realization hit me, and with it I started running around the room, checking each and every person within it. They were all dead, mutilated to various degrees. One man had his neck smashed, fusing his head to his shoulders. Another had his arms broken the wrong way, absolutely annihilating the joints. His face looked almost digested, with paper-thin, transparent skin covering what was left of him. I don't understand, I said, the words getting stuck in my throat. Ah, shit, huh? Calling the police, Zach said, still in the back, hiding away from the gruesome sight. I instinctively tried to do the same, only to realize that we didn't have a single bar of signal left. No reception. I'm gonna go, Zach started to say, only to be interrupted by a gut-wrenching, wet gasp. It was a man sitting directly in front of us. He was trying to breathe. I couldn't catch his breath due to his mutilated face. Tommy rushed to his aid, trying his best to clear the airway. I hesitated in joining in, just staring at my friend, desperately trying to help. It's gonna be all right, just ow. He yelled as he pulled away his arm in shock. What happened? Zach asked. I don't know, I just touched him and it hurt, Tommy explains. I glanced over at the gasping man. The flesh had been stripped from his bone where Tommy touched, revealing cartilage, a couple of arteries. Let me have a look, I said as I directed the light at his hands. What the hell is that? The mangled flesh stripped from the man seemed to have attached itself to Tommy's hands. He tried to pull it off, but it had practically fused with his skin. I don't know, but it fucking hurts, he said. I can't get it off. I turned to the gasping man. His breath was now controlled. He was staring at us with eyeless sockets. I quickly glanced around the room, only to realize that every single person in the theater had awakened, each of them looking intently at us. Fuck this shit, let's get out of here, Zach said before bolting to the doors. He pulled as hard as he could, but quickly realized that someone had locked him from the outside. I ran up and joined them. Together we tried our best to pull the doors open, but it was no use. We were trapped. Tommy, come on, help us, Zach begged. But Tommy didn't respond. Tommy, what are you waiting for? I chimed in. Nothing. He was just standing there, staring at his arm. The flesh had bound to him now and stretched all the way up towards his neck, all within a minute. Tom, are you all right? I asked, already knowing the answer. He redirected his transfixed gaze at me. His face was rid of all emotion, but I could see it in his eyes that he was in tremendous pain. We could see the flesh dig its way into his body, digesting the skin along the way, turning it transparent. Before long, it had reached his face, eating it away like a parasite. Oh, God, was all I could get out. But the worry I felt for my friend was quickly replaced by utter panic, as every single person in the theater stood up. What are they doing? I don't know, man, but we gotta find a way out of here. Though the place was ancient, it had 2 emergency exits next to the screen. We rushed down the aisle, splitting up to try each one as quickly as possible. It's locked, Zach yelled, as was mine, but before I could let Zach know that fact, the people in the theater all started moving towards it. I couldn't tell why they hadn't reacted before, but at that moment they had all heard Zach, and they were going to surround him. Don't let them touch you. I called out as I frantically searched for an escape route. It was no use. Before I could even react, they grabbed onto Zach. He let out a yelp in pain, but his attempted screams quickly turned to mere gargles as the flesh penetrated his throat. Once he'd been silenced, they turned their attention towards me. Without time to think, I just rushed back to our seats. We had a bottle of vodka. Just as one of them reached out to get me, I smashed the bottle on his head. Then I pulled out a lighter and tossed it at the soaked creature. In an instant, the mutilated man lit up in a blaze of fire, stumbling into the others and lighting them too. The smoke quickly activated the smoke detectors, which subsequently, the sprinklers rained water down upon us. The fire wouldn't be enough to stop them, but the emergency at least unlocked the doors. Without hesitation, I just ran outside, leaving my dying friends behind. I left the movie theater, but didn't stop running until I saw a car drive down the road. Seeing me in distress was enough to make them call the police, who arrived promptly. I tried my best to explain the situation to them, but how could they believe me? Still, they agreed to check the place out. But once we arrived, I was shocked to find the building abandoned. The lights were off, and there was no sign indicating that the building had once been a movie theater. The insides were barren as well, with a thick layer of dust and no bodies. By all means, the cinema we'd entered only hours earlier was gone. I don't know what happened that night, and I know Tommy and Zach's bodies will never be found. But if you ever get invited to Theater de la Morts, stay as far away as you can. After struggling to find a suitable sleeping position on my bed, I got up annoyedly. My name's Arthur, and I stay in a rented apartment with my roommate Chase. He's 1 year older than me, living in this apartment for the last 5 years. Chase works as a website developer. I've joined a new job and came here looking for an apartment to stay close to work. One afternoon in a Walmart, I came across Chase, who was talking to a cashier about looking for a roommate to earn some extra cash. Quite forcefully, I talked to him and grabbed this ideal opportunity for me. As time went by, Chase and I started to become close friends. We could barge into each other's life, keeping aside all formalities. So, after waking up with an irritated, sleepless mind, I went straight to Chase's room and knocked on his door. Yo, Chase, you still up? After 2-3 knocks, Chase opened the door and came out. Looks like you couldn't sleep either. Saying this, he sat up on the living room couch and lit up a smoke. I opened the window of the living room to see how the city was still awake. Cars were rushing by, with people walking like nocturnal animals on the dingy sidewalks. A group of homeless people were doing drugs, sitting on a corner of a nearby street. We live close to downtown LA, so seeing addicts lying here and there wasn't a shocking scene for us. I was just too tired to sleep, I guess. Wish we could do something to pass the night. Tomorrow's a Sunday after all. Well, we can go to a late-night movie. There's an old Siegel screen at the outskirts. It features classic horror films. Hey, you mean that one with the hotspot of heroin addicts? For whatever, we'll have a few beers anyway, so it doesn't matter. I always liked Chase's subtle sense of humor. I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea. This is the end of the month, and we both have a pocket crunch, so watching a late-night show on the single screen won't be too much of a problem. I agreed with this plan, and we both went to change and head out. At the time, there was going to be no ladies that would come across our path, so I wore an old t-shirt and a pair of black pants. Chase came out with 2 helmets. He has an old motorcycle that still runs like a cheetah. The only issue is sometimes it takes too long to start. Chase keeps on kicking it while cursing this old thorn. We locked the main door of our apartment and came upstairs. All the lights of the buildings in our neighborhood were turned off. It wasn't hard to understand that right now was some group of junkies. If any sane people are awake, that's me and Chase. Standing outside the main gate, I stared at the night sky. Chase went to get his motorcycle out as I waited on the sidewalk. I was lost looking at the stars when a funky smell entered my nostrils. I looked down and saw a creepy-looking old woman standing right next to me, with a sharp, expressionless face and wide, bloodshot eyes. Her terrifying gaze made me numb for a while. I somehow controlled myself and said, "What? What do you want?" Instead of replying, she took out her empty, frail, bony hands and stretched it towards me. As her filthy hand dangled in the air like a rusty, almost broken twig from a dying tree, I could see the mud in her fingernails. It took me a moment to realize she was begging. "Yo, Arthur, hop in, man." All of a sudden, Chase's voice came like bliss. His voice grabbed me by the neck and pulled me out from a deep gutter where I was sinking in fear, facing this horrible-looking woman. I immediately took a few steps back and said, "Sorry, I can't help you." I sat on Chase's motorcycle and he kick-started it in one try. As we drove away, the woman just stood there like before and watched me. I was constantly turning back to see if she was following us or not. When she finally went out of my sight, I exhaled a deep breath of relief. Who was that woman? I don't know. Maybe a homeless person. Maybe she wanted to be your girlfriend. Anytime else I would have laughed at Chase's joke, but this time I didn't say anything. I was just happy that we drove away from her ASAP. It was around 1 in the morning when we reached the movie theater. The broken board with old-fashioned lights and a small ticket counter stood like a lone wolf. We walked to the counter and Chase asked for 2 tickets for whatever show was going on. The old ticket seller in his late 50s started punching the tickets. My eyes went to the left corner of the movie theater. Under a shade of a clothes shop adjacent to the theater, I could see a human figure standing in the dark. Before I could contemplate on this realization, the person surfaced from the darkness. To my horror, it was the same creepy homeless woman that I'd met in front of our house. The distance between our apartment and this movie theater is about 15 minutes. There's no way this old woman came from our apartment to this theater by foot, taking the same time we did on a motorcycle. She stood there silently like a statue and then lifted her filthy hand in the air begging for money. Chase. What? Do you see that woman? Yeah. What's wrong with her? It's her. The woman we saw before leaving. Have you lost it? It's probably some other homeless chick. They all look the same after a point, you know? Come on, let's go. Chase didn't believe me, and I had no urge to stand there anymore. Thinking maybe Chase is right, and I'm just overacting, I followed him inside the theater. Apart from us, there were hardly 3-4 people in the entire hall. We sat down and started drinking beer. It must have been 20 minutes or so. We were totally into the movie when all of a sudden Chase grabbed my hand. Before I could ask him what it was, he pointed to a row in the middle, lifting his arm. His hand was cold in fear, and his face was pale white. Following his eyes, I realized why. It was her again. She was standing inside the movie theater some rows away, staring directly at us. No matter how old and crappy this place is, there's no way one can get in without buying a ticket. And this homeless woman didn't have any money to buy one. Before I could say anything, Chase got up and said, "Come on, let's go." We exited the movie theater from the opposite door and came out the backside right where we parked the motorcycle. It was a secluded spot with no one around us. Chase got on it and kicked the motorcycle, but it didn't start. He was getting ready to kick it again when we heard a playful chuckle behind us. Turning around, we saw the homeless woman was standing near the back door. And for the first time, an ear-to-ear smile had taken place on her previously expressionless face. Slowly, he started to walk in our direction. He was limping in a very disturbing way while giving that ear-to-ear smile that froze every drop of blood in my vein. I mean, around 2 a.m. of the night, and this eerie encounter with this scary-looking woman was enough to traumatize me for life. What the hell? Hurry up, Chase. I'm trying. Ow. Start, you fucker. He was screaming and kicking his motorcycle repeatedly, so let it stop. But nothing was happening. The woman was a few steps away from us, and she stretched her filthy arm. Then came off from her frail body like a piece of cloth and fell to the ground. The reeking smell of bloody flesh made me vomit right away, and Chase started to panic even more. We would have run away, but something in the back of my mind was telling me we wouldn't be able to go far without the motorcycle. She laughed like crazy as blood started dripping from the open wound of the severed arm. Suddenly, creating a loud sound, the motorcycle started, and I hopped in screaming. Just go. We didn't sleep the entire night after reaching home. Every 10 minutes, Chase and I kept checking the roads from our window, fearing maybe she would be there again. When finally, the sun started rising, and we went to bed like two timid kids who had enough scare for one night. We never saw that woman again, but the story doesn't end there. A few days later, our landlord came to collect the rent. When he told us about our next-door neighbor finding an old homeless woman dead on the sidewalk one afternoon. Her body had been decomposing as flies and maggots were crawling on her skin. The cops were called, and they later concluded she was on the sidewalk dead for a whole day. No one cared to notice. Her time of death was announced on the 20th afternoon, but Chase and I saw her on the night of the 21st. The same day the cops came to take away her dead body. My wife and I don't live together. She had become abusive over the last few months, mostly towards our daughter. Our daughter is almost 18 months old and is my whole world. I am unemployed at the moment, but my mother had been helping me out a lot. Today at around 4 p.m. I took my daughter to the store. I usually do this around the time she wakes up from her nap. My daughter is a very active child and can't seem to sit still for more than 10 minutes without getting cranky. I usually let her walk with me, holding her hand and patiently walking at her pace. I usually get just a juice for her, but had to get some extra groceries that I was short on: flour, sugar, and some noodles. I also remembered we were low on milk and grabbed a gallon on our way back. With all that I was carrying, I wasn't able to hold her hand. I made sure to walk behind her, but that only makes her walk slowly. As we made our way to the register, I was continuously urging her to keep walking, which she would do, but only for a second before her attention would be drawn to another rickety box with whatever was on sale, or she would see something colorful on a lower shelf. I was getting a bit frustrated, but I wasn't showing it in my voice. I kept urging her to keep walking, and she kept getting sidetracked. With everything I was carrying, I started to wish I had grabbed a basket. At the front, the customer service desk holds register 1, which was thankfully open. I want to take the time to mention that my daughter is very fond of saying hi and waving at everyone. I set everything up to get rung up, but the service attendant was busy with a return at the customer service area, so I had to wait. The entrance to the store is to my right. The only exit is behind the service desk, which leads into the small foyer before leading to the other doors. As people enter, they have to pass the customer service desk. I was being fatherly to my daughter, trying to entertain her with patty cake and the itsy bitsy spider while we waited for the cashier to check us out. My daughter would frequently wave at people passing and say hi in her squeaky toddler voice. Some people would smile and wave back, while others would stop to adore her. At this point, I'm used to people doing that. It makes me happy knowing my daughter isn't a shy, cranky little asshole like some of the kids you see in the stores like this. The lady was ready to check us out, and I told my daughter to hold my hand since I wouldn't be looking her way. I had to pull my wallet out to retrieve my debit card to pay for the groceries and let her hand go for a moment. I kept looking her way to make sure she wasn't wandering off. The lady went to hand me my receipt when all of a sudden she yelled at someone behind me. "What are you doing with his daughter?" She bellowed as I turned to look at a man who had picked her up and started running towards the entrance doors. I was shocked. The doors didn't open since they were a one-way set of doors, and the cashier quickly picked up the phone yelling that she was calling the police. I was stunned to the point of immobilization, but quickly realized what was going on. I have a pocket knife that I usually carry on me so I can break the seal on my daughter's juice. I quickly ran after the man as someone started to make their way through the entrance doors. He didn't get a chance to run through before I slammed my fist across his temple. I decided not to use the knife in case I might get in trouble. The man stumbled and I grabbed my daughter from his arms. He then proceeded to run out the door, empty-handed. The police arrived about 5 minutes later and asked me what I had seen. I explained that I hadn't seen the man's face, since he had shaggy long hair and a beard. He was also wearing a hoodie, which wasn't that much of a surprise. They took the statement of several witnesses, including the cashiers, and had already had their other officers searching the area. Someone had said the guy had ran behind the building, but the officers didn't find anyone. The police took us home and then asked more questions like, "Have you seen him before? Do you know anyone who looks like this man?" And then proceeded to ask about the home life. The CPS had been over earlier in the day to discuss my wife's mental health issues, and the police had been here earlier as well. The officer asked if we needed any groceries or anything else, and I told them no. The officers left, leaving me their cards in case I saw the guy around the area. About 20 minutes later, I got a knock at the door. To my surprise, the officers had returned with the largest box of Pamper diapers I had ever seen, a large box of wipes, about 6 large Winco bags of groceries, and a couple of bags of toys. I fell to my knees and cried after they left us. I had spent almost 5 minutes choking back tears as I thanked them. They had left us with a Christmas card saying I was a strong father to have had so much go on recently, and that my daughter was lucky to have such a great father. There was $100 in the card too, wrapped in a note that said to get a drink or two if I needed it. I don't drink, so I will probably get some extra Christmas presents for my mom and daughter. So, to the fucker that tried to kidnap my daughter, I hope the police find you, and I hope we never meet again. The best story my grandfather ever told me happened back when he was 18 years old on Christmas Eve in 1959. He was lying on his couch with a broken leg, which was perched on the arm of the couch, all wrapped up in a cast. He was listening to the radio and watching the snow fall outside as he used the poker to adjust the wood in the fire. It was about 8 p.m. and he was alone in the house. His family lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, and his father and brothers were across the property in the barn, roughly about a mile away. He doesn't recall where his mother was. He was reading something in the newspaper about President Eisenhower when there came a furious pounding at the door. An enraged voice screamed from the other side of the door that Owen, my great-grandfather, was going to die tonight. My grandfather didn't respond to this. Unable to move off the couch, he pulled the rug across the room until the shotgun, which had been leaning against the fireplace, was in reach, and he picked it up and cocked it, pointing it towards the front door. My grandfather says for the next 5 to 10 minutes, the man continued screaming, circling the house and pounding on windows, screaming for Owen to come out. He was clearly drunk and out of his mind and wasn't leaving the house until someone opened up. My grandfather winced as the man banged on the window right above the couch, but he still didn't move or acknowledge it. Finally, the man returned to the front door and pounded on it until he kicked it in. My grandfather said that he felt the blast of cold air and the stench of tobacco and whiskey as the man stomped through the dark hallway and walked right into the living room. He was a tall, lanky guy with brown teeth and an uneven gray beard, like he had only shaved part of his face. The guy's eyes were as big as hubcaps and he was barefoot, which was crazy as it was snowing outside. For about 10 seconds, the guy didn't even notice my grandfather, but was glancing around the room quickly, his eyes darting back and forth like a rat until his eyes fell upon the couch. He saw my grandfather, he saw the shotgun, and he froze like a deer in the headlights. My grandfather cocked the hammer back on one of the barrels. He had him dead to rights and the intruder knew it. My grandfather snapped, "Get the fuck out." The man took a step back, looking more enraged than afraid. "Where's Owen?" he hissed. "Get out," my grandfather yelled. The guy turned around, walked into the kitchen, and dug through the pantry until he found a pint of whiskey. He even turned around and looked back into the living room just to make sure the shotgun was still up. He threw back the whiskey, dropped the bottle in the sink, and walked out, calling back over his shoulder, "Tell Owen I said Merry Christmas." Once the guy was outside, my grandfather heard him knock over the pile of firewood by the steps. After another minute, he smelled smoke and realized the guy had set fire to the pile, likely intending to burn the house down. My grandfather hobbled over awkwardly, shotgun still up, barely able to hold it straight on his bad leg, and peered outside. The guy was gone, but there was so much snow around the fire and so much icy wind assaulting it that the fire was already nearly out. When Owen and the others got back and saw the charred marks on the front stairs, they asked what happened, and my grandfather told them everything. Owen flew into a rage, took the shotgun, and followed the guy's tracks out across the fields with a lantern. He didn't come back until Christmas morning, when the family was all gathered in the kitchen for breakfast. Owen tossed the gun down and hissed that the fucking thing hadn't even been loaded. When my grandfather asked if he got him, Owen nodded and responded, "Oh yes," and that was it. He never got my great-grandfather Owen to report exactly what happened or even know how he knew the man. My grandfather said that he never saw the stranger ever again. I asked him if he thought Owen had killed him, and he responded, "I'm almost positive that he did." When I asked, "But how did he do it with no ammo in the gun?" my grandfather looked back at me and said, "There's dozens of ways to kill a man with your hands." 5 or so years ago, before I met my husband Brian, I lived in a dinky little apartment complex just off campus. My roommate then was another girl attending the university. Neither of us owned a car, so we had no choice but to walk 3 blocks to a convenience store located across the street from the science building. Almost a day didn't go by that we needed to pick up something, and we became well known by the people working there. One year, my roommates had a friend from back home, Nina, spend the week of spring break with us. She seemed cool enough, but she sometimes came across as abrasive to people she didn't know. She kinda had a big mouth, I guess. This trait made me laugh at times, but her rudeness could make a lot of people angry. On the Saturday night before she was scheduled to leave, we had a little get-together at our place. My roommate was with her boyfriend, so Nina and I were the only ones around at the time. Earlier that day, she had scored an ounce of bud from one of our neighbors. He would sell us a little from time to time. We were planning on smoking before everybody started to show up, but I realized we were out of papers. Since we were going to have to pick up some beer anyways, we headed to the store. We loaded up on plenty of drinks and snacks when we got there, and then headed back to the apartment. As we walked across the parking lot, some guys hanging out on the side of the building yelled some crude words at us. This wasn't out of the norm. On occasion, when I went to the store at night, there were a few dudes hanging out. Sometimes they would make an off-color comment, and I would laugh it off. They weren't being mean or anything. I thought they were just having fun. That would be the whole of it. Nothing was said after that. I'd walk on home and get no further problems from them. However, the night I was with Nina, and she wasn't familiar with the little game we played, when they made their comment, she told them to F off. And this reply didn't go well with them. They acted in a way I'd never seen before and started calling us all sorts of terrible names. It may have ended there, but when Nina heard their reaction, she gave them the finger. It quickly escalated after that. 2 of the guys began running after us, cursing the whole way. Understandably, I was terrified and started running away from them. Nina laughed like we were playing, but I certainly didn't think they were playing around. They looked furious. I doubt any girl ever had spoken to them like this before, and it made them very angry. I thought Nina finally got the hint and began running with me. Luckily, we weren't far from our apartment, and we got to the door and inside before they could catch us. I locked the deadbolt behind us and took a big breath. Nina started laughing again. She hadn't taken them seriously at all and must have seen it as some sort of big joke. I didn't, that's for sure. Her laughing made me even angrier, and I commenced to cussing her out, but her chuckles continued. She had no ability to take anything seriously, and she wasn't even high yet. I'd had enough of her and headed into the kitchen to put up the beer and chips. On my way out of the kitchen into my room, a loud pounding on the door started. I freaked out and hid under the window next to it. The shades were down, so I don't believe they could see us. Nina stood frozen in the front of the door and her eyes were the size of saucers. I think she was finally getting it. The pounding continued, followed by more loud cussing and calling us filthy names I don't dare repeat here. Carefully, I stood up and peeked out a little crack in the blinds. There were 3 guys now, and you could tell they were livid. Then things got far worse. My male neighbor, the one who sold to us, came walking down the stairs yelling at the guys and asking them what their problem was. I began to feel a bit relief. He was a big dude and I'd never seen anyone give him any trouble. However, before he'd get anywhere by talking to them, all 3 guys jumped on him and started beating him. He went down quickly, but they continued the beating by kicking him, one after another. All of a sudden I heard Nina yelling through the door at them. She demanded they stop or she was calling the cops. They must have heard her too. They turned back towards the door and started yelling curses at her again, laughing at the threat. I looked around the corner and saw Nina with her eyes stuck to the peephole and dialing 911 on her phone. She was connected with the dispatcher and explained the situation as fast as she could. She sat quiet for a moment, listening, and then yelled back through the door. "The cops are on their way. You guys better get the F out of here." They continued laughing, but soon stopped and began talking to each other. One more curse was uttered half-heartedly and one of them spit on the door. Then they looked at each other and ran off. I let out a giant sigh. I could finally breathe again. I wanted to go out and check on my neighbor, but was still way too terrified to go outside. He was laying motionless when I looked out at him. I started praying and asking for him not to be dead. About a minute later, I saw some beams from flashlights followed by 4 cops walking carefully toward the door. One crouched down and checked my neighbor's pulse. I could tell here the words "faint pulse" as he spoke through his radio. When the officers knocked on the door, Nina opened it for them. She gave the one in the front a big hug and kiss on the cheek. He just stood there, frozen in surprise with a big smile on his face. She let go and he chuckled a bit under his breath as they all entered the apartment. We thanked them for showing up so fast and Nina began blurting out the entire story before they even had time to ask. I hurried out behind them to check on my neighbor and a paramedic came up right after and started working on him. I asked him if my neighbor was going to be okay, but he simply looked at me and said, "We should make it, bud. We'll have to fight." It wasn't the news I wanted to hear exactly, but I was happy to hear he'd survive. When his partner arrived soon after, they loaded him onto a stretcher and rushed him away. Even though I wanted to go with them, I knew I had to stay behind and talk to the police. So, I went back in and sat down and waited to be questioned. The cops left a few hours later. I was still shaking a little from the shock of everything. I felt really bad for what happened to my neighbor. He didn't deserve it. He was just trying to help. If I would have had a car, I would have went to the hospital to check on him, but I didn't. So I couldn't think of anything better than a beer and some smoke to help me relax. I was overjoyed that no one decided to show up for our party. Things could have turned out far worse. While we sat in front of the TV and smoked, Nina apologized for what she did. I was happy to hear it, but I wasn't the only person she needed to apologize to. She agreed, and she stayed a day longer to go with me on the bus to see him in the hospital and do so in person. Like any real hero, he said there was no need and asked how we were. And we spent most of the day with him until they kicked us out. Nina left the next morning and happily, I'd never seen her again. My neighbor Alec spent the whole of the next week in the hospital recuperating from the attack. When he returned to the complex, my roommates and I had him over for dinner. She figured it was the least we could do for thanking him for helping, and of course, I agreed. For the remainder of the time I lived there, I would see him from time to time, never forgetting to thank him for what he did. He managed to bounce back from his injuries well. Unfortunately, although his limp eventually went away and the cuts healed, he'll most likely have sight memory issues for the rest of his life. I can only hope he's able to move on and forget myself, Nina, and the whole mess that caused all of it. I've always loved animals, and this is the story of how I can barely even look at a dog anymore. Ever since I was a child, I knew I wanted a career where I would need to work with animals. A few weeks ago, my junior year ended and summer vacation started. I thought it was finally time to decide what I really wanted to do with my life. Since I need to start applying to colleges soon, I wanted to get a part-time job for the summer, hoping it would give me a better idea of what working with animals would be like. I started researching, and that's where I came across pet sitting. I never knew that was an option. Being paid to spend some time with animals felt like a dream. I immediately started scouring websites, looking for a job in the area. I finally found one close enough. Mr. Smith had a work meeting in another state and needed someone to take care of his Shih Tzu, Fluffy, overnight. I applied for the job, and after asking a few questions about myself, Mr. Smith selected me for it. Finally, the day the job was here. I was bursting with excitement. I took out a bag to pack some of the stuff I need over the night. As soon as I did, I received a phone call. "Hi, Amanda." A heavy voice came through the phone. "This is Mr. Smith. You're supposed to come by later this evening. I was wondering if you could possibly drop by a little bit early." I looked at the empty overnight bag in the front of me and replied, "I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. I don't think that would be possible. Is there anyone else who could let me in?" "Afraid not." After about a moment of awkward silence, he continued, "How about I just leave the key under the doormat? You can let yourself in." "Sure, I can do that." "Great. Just make sure you take Fluffy out for a walk when you arrive." "Yeah, of course." My words were cut off by a distant screaming, presumably directed at Mr. Smith. "Ah, here you're going away for the night. Make sure to take that damn nuisance with you." The voice of the man was rough and hostile. His words were no better. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Yeah, that's just old Larry. Never liked a living thing around him. He'll most likely scream at you too when you're walking Fluffy. Just ignore him and keep walking. Gets a little crazy. It's not dangerous, just very loud." "Great," I thought to myself. "Anyway," Mr. Smith continued, "I'll leave the key under the doormat." "Thanks." "No problem. Bye." I hung up the phone. After packing a pair of night clothes, toiletries, and some other things, I headed out. I reached the house and bent down to lift the doormat. I picked up the key and opened the door. Before I even had a chance to look around, Fluffy jumped on me in excitement. Even while jumping, she barely reached my knee. I'd met her a few times before today. She was the sweetest dog. She never even barked at strangers, much less spite them. Still, Mr. Smith and I thought it best to familiarize myself with Fluffy beforehand. I dropped my bag on the side, and after a few encouraging words and pats on the head, I turned around and faced the door, where Fluffy's leash was hanging on the hook. I picked it up, attached it to a harness, and walked out the door. As I locked the door, I felt Fluffy pulling on the harness. For such a small dog, she was using a considerable amount of force. Considering I had a long history of losing keys, I thought it best to leave it where I'd found it. Fluffy kept tugging, and so I quickly bent down again and left the key under the doormat in a hurry. We took a few rounds of the park nearby, making it a point to not go too close to any of the houses. I didn't want to get screamed at by Larry. After reaching back to the Smith residence, I let out a loud sigh of relief. No screaming, hateful neighbors. I bent down again to pick up the key, but before I could lift the doormat, I noticed the key lying on the side. It was half peeking out underneath the doormat. I picked it up while shaking my head, mentally chastising myself for my recklessness. I walked inside, untethered Fluffy's leash, and finally looked around. The first thing that caught my eye was a hideous clown statue in the living room corner. It was facing the sofa, which was my bed for the night. I stared at the statue with a disgusted look on my face. It was a quintessential clown, fully equipped with a white face, red nose, colorful clothing, and comical oversized gloves and shoes. How am I supposed to sleep with that thing staring at me? I thought out loud. A blaring alarm pulled me out of my head. I pulled up my phone and switched off the alarm. It was time for Fluffy's dinner. Walked to the kitchen while shaking my head, trying to get the clown off my mind. I filled Fluffy's bowl with the dog food and set it down for her. She dug into it immediately. My head snapped back when I heard a thud coming from the other room. There was no one in the house but Fluffy and me. My heartbeat quickened. I picked up a knife from the kitchen counter and slowly walked to the living room. I looked around and sighed in relief. There was nothing there. But just to be safe, I checked the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom down the hallway. I found nothing there either. With a sigh of relief, I sat down on the couch and put the knife on the table in front of me. A shiver ran down my spine as I remembered the clown. I could feel it staring at me. It made me beyond uncomfortable. I looked around, picked up the tablecloth, and threw it over the clown's head. Even with the sheet over him, his shoes were poking out. I tried to forget about it and relax, but I found myself constantly looking back at it. Every time I did, it just got creepier. Who puts a clown in the living room? I thought to myself. I couldn't sit here with the statue there, and I definitely couldn't sleep here. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Smith's number. After a few rings, he finally picked up. Hi, Amanda. Is everything okay? I spoke hesitantly. Yeah. I just wanted to ask if it will be okay if I move the statuette at the living room. I started speaking faster, feeling the need to justify myself. I'll put it back before I leave. It's just making me a little uncomfortable, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to sleep with it here. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you. What are you talking about? My voice came out even more hesitant than before. The clown statue, in the corner. A moment passed by with no reply. I lifted the phone off my ear to check if the call was still connected. Then I heard a whisper. Amanda, we don't have a clown statue. My body tensed. With every word he uttered, his voice grew louder until he finally screamed out the words. Get out of there now. As soon as Mr. Smith said those last words, I felt a faint breath on my ear. The next few things happened instantaneously, and at that moment, I felt like the world slowed down and sped up all at the same time. Panic and adrenaline filled my body. I looked back and saw a flash of white. I felt a jarring pain on the side of my abdomen. It was the clown. What I thought was a statue was standing right behind me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and kicked the clown between the legs. He cried out in pain and momentarily toppled over. I ran to the door, only to find it locked with a deadbolt. The thud from before, I thought. The clown had locked me in. I saw it getting up, and I ran down the hallway into one of the bedrooms. I locked the door behind me. Only once I'd stopped running did I fully feel the pain in the side of my abdomen. There was a gushing stab wound. I put pressure on the wound to stop it from bleeding, but it wouldn't stop. I felt dizzy. Right as I thought I would pass out from the pain, I heard Fluffy cry. I cursed under my breath. I knew I couldn't leave her alone. I picked up the only thing I thought I could use as a weapon, a lamp, and slowly limped outside. I wanted to call off to Fluffy, but I knew I couldn't make any noise. When I reached the end of the hallway, I had to fight every bone in my body not to let out a scream. On the floor was a pool of blood that I was desperately hoping was not Fluffy's. Just the thought of it made my stomach churn. I heard laughter behind me. Horrid, shrill, evil laughter. I turned around, and the clown was standing across the room, laughing at me. The instant I looked at his face, all hope left my body. Blood was dripping down his mouth. My face must have shown how horrified I was, and it made the clown's smile wider. Its teeth had bits of fur stuck in it. Fluffy's fur. I felt my stomach churn at the realization of what it had done. He started walking closer, and I started backing away. Even though I was terrified, I could hear the distant sirens in the background, which momentarily flooded me with relief. Mr. Smith must have phoned the police, but all I could focus on was Fluffy's blood dripping down its face. How could you? I croaked. He smiled and kept walking towards me until I hit the door. Before I could run, he was on top of me. We fell to the floor in a tussle. With a sinister smile on his face, he said, "It's your turn." That voice. I knew that voice. As he picked up a knife in his hand and stabbed me again, the door burst open. The police fired 3 consecutive shots, and its body fell on top of me. Larry's body fell on top of me. I passed out from the shock. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. An officer was sleeping in the chair across the room. I cleared my throat, and he woke up with a jolt. "You're awake," he said. I simply nodded. He proceeded to tell me that I was lucky to be alive. He told me about how they searched Larry's house and found jars of body parts, both animal and human. The officer got up from his chair, his hands together tightly in front of him. He wished me well again. He repeated how lucky I was to be alive. But I didn't feel lucky. The events of last night would never stop replaying in my mind. Most of all, I would never forget Fluffy. From that moment on, every time I would look at a dog, the image of the clown's face, mouth dripping with blood and fur stuck in his teeth, would flash across my eyes. Did you ever have an imaginary friend when you were a kid? I did. His name was Freckles the Clown. He had red fuzzy tufts of hair jutting out of the sides of his head at odd angles. His eyelids were painted blue and his face was painted white. He had a red nose and lots of freckles. The freckles weren't just on his face either, but all over his clothes and arms like a million little misshapen polka dots. Or like blood splatter. When I walked home from school, Freckles would tag along. I didn't have many friends, only one or two, and they had other friends who they spent most of their time with. So, I was left alone with Freckles. We'd splash through mud puddles together in the spring, make piles of leaves and dive into them in the fall. We'd make snow forts in the winter, and snowmen to guard them. I never had many real friends, but I was never lonely as long as Freckles was around to keep me company. But what I didn't know was that Freckles was a jealous, imaginary friend. He didn't like me hanging out with anybody except for him. One day at school, I made a friend. A real one. A real one. Not invisible like Freckles. A kid named Peter started talking to me during recess. We were both playing on the jungle gym when I saw a South Park t-shirt. I complimented him on it and said that was my favorite show, even though technically I wasn't allowed to watch it. That seemed to be enough information for him to decide I was okay. He told me that a bunch of his friends were coming over that weekend for his birthday party and invited me to come. I looked around to see where Freckles was, since I always looked for his approval. He was nowhere to be seen. It was like he had just vanished. I told Peter I'd be happy to go to his birthday party. He gave me his address and told me to be there Saturday around noon. An extra invitation was in his backpack, and he gave it to me at the end of the day, hastily filled out with my name. Misspelled, but that was okay. I was actually invited to a birthday party for the first time in my life. I couldn't believe it. The rest of the week, I was so excited about the birthday party that it was all I talked about. To my parents, my teachers, to everybody willing to listen. Freckles, however, seemed like he was mad at me though. He didn't want me to talk about the birthday party, didn't even want to hear about it. Eventually, he seemed to come around now. By Friday night, he was excited as I was, but not for the same reasons. Saturday finally came, and my mom drove me to Peter's house. She dropped me off and gave me a kiss on the cheek, telling me to be good before driving away. I went inside and found a bunch of kids from my class who were already there, playing pin the tail on the donkey and wearing pointed cardboard hats covered in polka dots. "Hey, look who's here," Peter said when I got inside. He introduced me to his other friends, who pretended to meet me for the first time. It was weird because I had seen them all in school for years, but they acted like I was new to the neighborhood or something. It didn't bother me though. I was just excited to be included for once. "Did you bring a jacket?" Peter asked. "We're gonna go on the forest and play paintball with slingshots." It turned out his mom had just bought a jumbo container of paintballs and a dozen slingshots for his birthday party, since that was what he wanted to do more than anything on this special day. What a great mom. I'd indeed bought a jacket with me, and I put it on after we'd eaten lunch. It was stuffed from the kid-friendly spread consisting of pizza, Pepsi, and ice cream cake. 10 of us went outside and made our way to the nearby forest. It's funny, these days stuff like this would probably never fly. Giving kids slingshots and projectiles and sending them out into the forest to have fun. That's how it was back then. Nobody thought anything of it. We all split up for the free-for-all match and agreed we would meet up again where we started, at the entrance to the forest, once an hour had passed. The ground was muddy, and fallen leaves covered the forest floor as I walked around by myself. no longer feeling so lonely. Everyone had scattered throughout the forest. Strangely, I didn't see anyone for a while. Even Freckles had disappeared on me. I wondered if maybe he was mad that I was making new friends, but he seemed excited about the party the day before. It didn't make sense. The whole hour went by and nobody shot a single paintball. As far as I could tell, there were no joyous yells or playful insults ringing through the trees. It was dead silent. In fact, as if even the birds had become mute or had fled the woods entirely. Silence permeated everything. The sound of my boots crunching through the leaves was all I could hear. A full hour had passed, so I went uneasily back to the forest entrance, unsure what I would find there. Part of me thought maybe everyone had ditched me and run for the hills, realizing how much of a loser I actually was. Nobody was at the forest entrance. All the kids were still out there somewhere, roaming the woods. My unease growing more and more with each step, I began to search for them. I didn't know why, but a knot of worry was growing steadily in my belly, getting larger and heavier by the second. It took a while to find them. They were all together, so that made it easier. I was drawn in by the sound of someone chewing something stringy and wet, like inanimate. The sounds of teeth snapping cartilage and chewing gristle became even clearer as I drew near. Freckles was crouched and perched on a log like a wild primate. He was covered in blood and stripping the flesh from a piece of bone, licking his lips when he saw me. An overjoyed giggle poured out of him. Around him were the corpses of my new friends. Bloody, ragged, ripped flesh hung from their bones in places where he had taken big bites. The clothes were ripped and torn from their struggles to escape him. "You were right," he announced when he saw me. "Birthday parties are fun." My voice caught in my throat as I tried to scream, unable to make a sound. "I'm so glad you invited me."